Did it again. What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? At least I realized at that time. Didn't have the microphone on to start the show. This is what happens when I get excited to click that go live button instead of actually paying attention to what I'm supposed to be doing. But I wanted to jump in. Saw Matthew Tomlinson saying the pitching really sucks. No guys really with great floors. It's a tournament day. Totally agree with that, but I don't know that it sucks. I think there's some good options out here. I think we can work with a lot of these spots. So definitely some dumpster diving for sure, like Podegen Stoner says. But I think it's an interesting slate. We're coming right back with a 13 gamer after last night's massive 14 gamer. I had a pretty good night myself. Finished second in the FanDuel contest for 10K. So it was a nice little solid. Not victory, I guess, but a solid little bankroll builder, so not too bad there. It was a fun one. It was outlier lineup, not a lineup I had a ton of shares of, but it had Bobby Witt's Grand Slam, walk-off Grand Slam in it, so that was nice, and a surprise to get that one up to the top of the standings. It was a Zach Wheeler lineup, so enjoyed that. Had to sweat the end of the Dodgers game. The last plate appearance by JD Martinez would have if he had done more than singled, it would have burnt me. Still would have finished like third, but, a little bit of a sweat. So it was a good day. Hopefully you guys had a good day out there as well. Know we hit on some picks. Know we missed on some picks too. That's baseball. That's how it usually goes, particularly with 14 games on the slate. But we've got another good one. I think this is going to be a fun slate to get into. We've got a ton of weather out there. So I'm going to get a quick little update on the weather as we do the intro, as we let people trickle into the chat. We've got Podegen Stoner out there. We've got Trey. We've got Could Be Travis, Matthew Tomlinson, Lone Wolf, Fanatic. Gang's all here. Most of the gang's here. I don't see like Larry's not here yet. Like Shannon's not here yet. But most of the gang's here so far. I appreciate all the congrats, you guys. I wasn't trying to brag, and I'm not big on getting out there and like tweeting it or tooting my own horn or anything. There's Larry. What's up, buddy? But, thank you all for the congratulations. And, hey, hopefully it just supports the idea that some of this information is good. And hopefully it'll help get to you guys to the top of the standings, too. So let's dive into this one. Let me pull up the weather. Obviously, we're going to the experts on this. We've got concerns, I would say, in the Mets game, the Washington and the Mets game, and the Cubs and St. Louis game, and maybe in Atlanta. Everything else looks like might get some storms, might get a delay, but probably going to play. From what they're saying over on the other site, it looks like there's much more concern in, I think, St. Louis than there is in New York. And in the New York area right now, it's a sunny day. It's kind of warm. It's not nearly as hot as it was yesterday. It's like 10 degrees cooler at like 86 degrees, but it's like a sunny, bright day. I expect there's rain coming, like they're saying, but right now, like I'd be going to the ball game if it was decision time right now. So I feel like that one's probably going to play. Seems like Mr. Roth agrees with that take. The one with more concern is the St. Louis one. It looks like there's a lot of rain going at that one, and he's saying that he might change that one to red. So I would obviously just follow along with whatever the experts say as far as the weather. I hate to speculate on it. That's why I kind of try and jump to the weather on from one of the experts here without giving away what they're paying, what they're charging for over there. But at the same time, it's important information, and there's really only a few good sources for it. So we appreciate Mr. Roth over there for that info. Everything else looks like playable. Like I said, just maybe some rain hits the ballpark. They delay. They have to hang it up for a couple of innings and then come back, or a late start. But it looks like everything else is fairly safe. Could Be Travis says I went with a Wheeler and Singer 5-man Atlanta stack yesterday. That must have been pretty good, I would think. Singer had a pretty decent value game. Wheeler obviously had a very good game. Terry, congrats. Laughing at Matt Tomlinson's comment up there. Appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. All right, so let's just dive into this one. There's a lot to discuss. Phillies and the Pirates in the first one. I think this is obviously a pretty good source of pitching off the top. Aaron Nola hasn't exactly been himself. Joker's enthusiastic about the spot already. Aaron Nola hasn't exactly been himself this season. A 4.29 home run rate, a 4.25 ERA, a 3.76 xFIP, 24.8% strikeouts. It's down for him, but it's still a decent strikeout rate. 5.6% walks is a very good walk rate, 1.07 whip. He's just run into some premium contact, run into some power in bad spots this year, and it's burnt him a little bit more than it typically would. But I think he's one of our top pitching options. He projects like one of the top options on the board. Is very thin competition coming from the Pirates side of things. It's Jack Suwinski, Brian Reynolds, Andrew McCutchen, maybe some Ji-Man Choi, and then you've got a lineup filled with rookies going up against Aaron Nola. I'm going to side with Aaron Nola in that situation, even if there are some premium rookie bats in the lineup there. So I'm going with the Nola shares. He's obviously at a premium price tag on the DraftKings slate. Let me tell the dog to be quiet 1 second. Joker, keep it down, buddy. Come on, it's not time for anything. We'll do something fun later. When the sun goes down and it cools off a little bit, we might be able to take a stroll. That's what we've been doing lately, just waiting for the heat to drop a little bit. He's a big hairy dog, so like when it's hot, he's pretty miserable out there. So looking at Nola, outside of the premium contact issues, the home run rates, there's really nothing wrong with Aaron Nola right now. I think the strikeouts are okay. They're not as good as they've been over time. But what I love about Nola is he's gone 6 or more innings in 19 of 21 starts this season. He just pitches deep regardless of how the game's going. So he's always got a shot at that win, always got a shot at that quality start. Typically going to go 6-7 pretty good innings outside of the minor instances of power this year. So happy to go with shares of Aaron Nola, particularly at 99 on FanDuel. I love that spot over there. I think it's a good spot at 11K on DK. Little pricey, obviously, for the bumps in the road that he's hit, but one of the top starters in one of the top spots on the slate. If you do draw shares of the Pirates, it's really that top end with Suwinski, Reynolds, McCutchen, and Ji-Man Choi, and then take your pick of any of those rookies. Henry Davis is the most experienced in that group with 135 pretty good plate appearances so far. Everybody else below 100 plate appearances, not a ton of output yet from anybody in that group, but like Anthony Rodriguez is supposed to be good. Leo Verpagero is supposed to be good. He had a big home run the other day, has a 211 ISO in his 20 plate appearances. He's supposed to be a pretty decent power bat. Very cheap for a lot of those options down there. You've got Alika Williams, dead minimum price at shortstop, only 6 plate appearances, hasn't done anything with it yet. They're rolling out the rookie team here, so I think you can take shares of Nola against it, and then maybe a couple Suwinskis for his premium power upside. I love that he's only 3,800, 3,200. In a better spot. That's a really good bet to have as like a one-off. I think you can use him as a one-off here, but he's a little bit limited by the presence of Nola on the other side. Does have an 18.8% barrel rate, 50% hard hits, 21 home runs to lead this team. And then like Reynolds and McCutchen have just been okay to good. McCutchen's good WRC plus is supported by his ability to get on base more so than it is like his hit tool, his home runs, or anything like that. But he's a good correlated scoring option, a guy who can contribute individually. Choi has a little bit of power upside. Quinn Priester has not been good in his 2 starts. What I do like is that he's gotten 5 1/3 innings in each of them. So they're giving him a little bit of leash despite not really pitching well. I think he's, they're kind of looking at him as, hey, you've had your development time and you're here to stay. The issue with Priester, like I talked about the first time he came up, is he's got a kind of limited fastball. He's got just like a 40 grade in traditional scouting fastball, sits like low to mid 90s. He's got a plus curveball, but there's been questions about his fastball and how that's going to work in the show. So far, hasn't been great. It was, do I have these starts here? I thought I had put the starts in the article, but it doesn't look like oh, no, there it is. Sorry. He faced a total of, in 2 starts, 5 1/3, he faced 25 Guardians and 23 Padres. He allowed 4 home runs, 11 runs on 11 hits, walked 5, and struck out 6 across the 2 starts. So it's obviously been a little bit bumpy. I do think he's got an okay ceiling in this start. The Phillies are just good, though. I don't love throwing a pitcher like this into the Phillies lineup. He doesn't project great. 6,800, 6,300, you could throw a few value darts at it. He does have strikeout upside. He was a premium strikeout pitcher in the minors. There's good reason to believe that Quinn Priester's going to turn into a good major league starter. It's just he's probably not quite there yet, so I don't know how much those value darts are going to pay off. Going up against him with the power upside that he's allowed, with an 8.33% home run rate in play so far over the 2 starts, I think we can roster some Kyle Schwarber off the top. He's leading the team at a 14.58 home run number, 27 on the season, a 251 ISO, 14.8% barrels. Love Kyle Schwarber off the top, and he's cheap. 4,600 is cheap for Kyle Schwarber. 35, about right on FanDuel. Arguably a couple $100 cheap, but premium power bat across all of baseball. Trey Turner, struggling badly, still pricey at 57 on DK, very cheap at 31 on FanDuel. You can kind of average it down anyway because you've got Nick Castellanos for a really cheap price. Bryson Stott's fairly cheap for his upside. Brandon Marsh is very cheap for his upside. So you can average down that Trey Turner cost. It kind of sucks that he's still that high priced on DK, despite going 242, 294, 379. They're giving him a lot of price leash based on his career track record, which is totally fair. He's a superstar player when things are going right. Phil shortstop, I think you can still go to Trey Turner in your Philly stacks. Maybe you deprioritize him among some of these other Phillies bats, but I think he's still an important cog in the machine here for Philly. Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, all three of these guys are super playable. Stott is an interesting position in the lineup. 302, 344, 433 this year, 109 WRC plus. Not really a premium power bat, but does have good speed, can reset the table for some of these guys behind him, which I think is interesting. Realmuto, 12 home runs, 12 stolen bases as a cheap catcher. Alec Boehm, very productive season. Brandon Marsh, very productive season. A 119 WRC plus for Marsh, slashing 280, 361, 453. Two very good hit tools and on-base skills, run creation skills down here for Boehm and Marsh. Jake Cave, not so much. Oh, looks like a bunch of lineups are shopped. So let me see if that Phillies lineup holds up. Wow, Trey Turner is hitting 7th today. So the Phillies lineup runs, let me grab these updates while I talk. Phillies lineup runs Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Boehm hitting cleanup, Stott, Realmuto, Trey Turner. That's an interesting configuration with, I would imagine that's going to probably reduce some ownership on Trey Turner pretty significantly with him hitting 7th. I'm still pretty interested in him down there. It's just a weird configuration. Cleanup hitting Alec Boehm. Castellanos hitting 2nd, I like. Harper is up there still. Schwarber. Just an interesting configuration of this lineup, but still I think everything applies. You just reduce Trey Turner's expectation by like a half a plate appearance by dropping him down there. But I still like him, especially if that renders him even lower owned, particularly at the FanDuel price. DK price, not great. It also does, it doesn't really, because you can still consider him maybe like a loose wraparound play from the 7 spot back to the top. It's not as tight as like an 8 or a 9 spot, but it works. Let me see what other lineups just dropped. The Brewers, the Red Sox. We got a whole shitload of lineups here. The Brewers are right there. Let me just grab these while I look. So that dog's going nuts behind me. So that game pretty much boils down to Aaron Nola, some shares of Phillies as like a pretty decent mid-range opportunity. Quinn Priester as a dart throw, and like Pirate Stacks is kind of a dart throw or a hedge position, however you want to consider it, going up against Nola. Really don't love that spot for that lineup going up against Aaron Nola. I would not be surprised by Aaron Nola having a pretty good day today. Red Sox lineup going in. We've got the Cards, the Giants, the Nats. Man, everybody's dropping lineups. That's what I get for starting at 4 instead of 415. Use the links, dummy. Cards. Nootbaar hitting 3rd between Goldschmidt and Arenado for the Cards. Like that configuration. Giants and the Nats. Let's grab these. Last 2. Just a second more, gang. Hang in there. Take this opportunity to hit the like button. Take this opportunity to navigate over to Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days and follow the rotoscouts handle at rotoscouts. Don't care if you follow which one you follow, but follow one or the other so you're up to date on the links. I try and retweet one from the other, and I send the links out on the rotoscouts one, and then I retweet them all from the from my @digitalb one, which is just like my personal one over the years. But a lot of times I get confused switching between the two handles, and I accidentally retweet it and like it from the exact same handle I sent it from. So just keep an eye on both. Probably best to follow both. Hop into the free Discord. That's linked down from the description in the below the video here. Everything on the site is free. We've got the power index. We've got the home run picks. We've got the full article breaking this down game by game. If you don't want to listen to me talk, which I wouldn't blame you for, you could jump up there and read a lot of these same thoughts in sometimes greater detail, sometimes less detail, a lot less rambling, that's for sure. A lot less Joker freaking out behind me, licking my hand through this entire show. I've got my index finger like inside his ear, and he's licking my hand. It's getting pretty dirty over here. Good boy. Why don't you go lie down? Freak show. All right, so that was Nola. Some Phillies. We talked about it. Pirates is like a meh, and Quinn Priester is like a value dart. Let's move on. Twins with Bailey Ober on the bump going up against the Royals. I like the spot for Ober. He projects pretty well. He's uncomfortable at 10-3, 10-2, I think, publicly. But he's a pitcher I pretty much believe in. He's been pretty good this year, pretty good over time. 24.5% strikeout rate, only walks 4.9%, 2.76 ERA, a 4.32 xFIP, only a 0.97 whip, 12.9% swinging strikes. Going up against the Royals, a mid-range strikeout lineup, very inconsistent lineup. Not a ton of guys, actually nobody in this confirmed lineup over a league average WRC plus. A couple power bats, but nobody overly threatening here. You might run into a good day for the Royals around Bobby Witt, Sal Perez, MJ Melendez again. But Bailey Ober's a good pitcher, and I think that this number keeps the public a little bit at bay. I don't think the public's ready to pay 10-3, 10-2 for Bailey Ober all that much yet. So I might be wrong about the ownership, but I would expect pretty low ownership on what I think is a very good spot for this pitcher. He projects as one of the top options on the board. He's one of my favorite pitchers on the day, and just has a high strikeout upside, doesn't get himself in trouble. It's fairly sustained over time. Last year, 56 innings, 4.8% walk rate. Year before, 92 and a third. I think that was his rookie year, if I remember correctly. 20 starts, 25.3% strikeout rate, 5% walks. Just a pretty consistently good pitcher and difficult to hit. So I like the spot for Ober. I'm going to be going to it. I do not like the spot for Jordan Lyles. 6,600, 7,300. You can see all the power coming through against him for the Twins. So I think we can load up on some Twins bats. I expect they'll be relatively popular as a stack, but I think it makes a ton of sense to go to Twins bats here. There is a little bit of strikeout potential beyond Jordan Lyles' typical 16.6%, but what are we really talking about? I don't think that Jordan Lyles goes out and has a monster, 8 to 10 strikeout day and dominates the world and puts up a required fantasy score. He's just not that pitcher. 6.19 ERA for the season, 5.35 xFIP, allowing 10.3% barrels, a 4.80% home run rate over a decent-sized 107 and 2/3 inning sample. He's an innings eater at best. So I'm not worried about Jordan Lyles. I want to throw some Twins bats at him, starting with Carlos Correa, Edward Julian, Alex Kirilloff, Max Kepler are a couple of good lefties up at the top of the lineup. I think they're fairly interesting with the idea that Jorge Polanco and Edward Julian play the same position at second base on DK. So that becomes a decision point where you can play the more expensive Polanco, who I think will probably be less popular than Julian, just because Julian's cheaper, plays the same position, higher spot in the batting order, and has been on a roll over the past month and a half. But Polanco's a very, very good player over time. Very good power hitter, very good capable infielder. He's cheap at 4,400, 3,000 for his upside. So I really like the spot for Polanco. Byron Buxton slides down to the 6th spot because he's been so bad this year, but he only costs 5,200, 3,100, 17 home runs at 222 ISO. Ignore everything else. Just pay attention to that and hope for the best when you roster Buxton. He's looking a lot like Joey Gallo this season, but with a 12% lower strikeout rate. No Gallo in the lineup today. You get Willie Castro hitting 9th, which is interesting for him. 241, 322, 367. Not the most reliable guy to get on base, but multi-position eligible both sites. 2,200 on DK, 27 on FanDuel. 5 home runs. I don't really care about the pop with him, but 26 stolen bases. Use him as a wraparound play back up to the top of the lineup where I do want to get to Correa. He's just cheap. I still fully believe maybe we don't see the full turnaround. There's probably not enough time left with only 2 months left this season for him to really pull it together at the plate. But I still see the turnaround coming for Carlos Correa. He's not shot by any means. So 4,500, 2,900. I'm just getting a good power hitting shortstop. Maybe he's not a star right now, but a good power hitting shortstop still. 12 home runs, a 174 ISO. That's fine in a leadoff spot for that price. And then everybody else in this lineup is relatively cheap. So I like the spot for basically top to bottom Twin shares. If I'm on FanDuel, I don't need tons of Christian Vasquez, but if I'm building 20 FanDuel stacks, he's probably in 5 to 8 of them, something like that. Decent little power differentiator for 2,500. Only 3 home runs and 230 plate appearances. Hasn't hit for much power this season, but is capable of driving the ball. Cheap price, a position that nobody really plays on the FanDuel slate. So he's just somebody who helps differentiate lineups with what will probably be a popular team. Royal side of things, if you do go there, Michael Garcia off the top, 273, 323, 386, 14 steals. Decent hit tool, decent amount of speed, but a 93 WRC plus. Bobby Witt, obviously last night's hero with the walk-off grand slam. That was pretty awesome. Looking at that pitch, it was off of Joan Duran, who's the premium high-end closer for the Twins. Flamethrower. It was 101 and change mile an hour pitch inside, like out of the strike zone. According to the tweet I read, which was from one of the reputable like pitch analysis sources, it was like the 5th fastest pitch that anybody's hit a home run off of out of the zone, let alone in that kind of a situation. So it was just a ridiculously filthy pitch that he just crushed. So killer spot for Bobby Witt. Love to see him do it again. I do get to him a decent amount as a one-off because he only cost $3,100 on the FanDuel slate at shortstop. 17 home runs, 29 stolen bases, 99 WRC plus, does lead the team, still leaves him a percentage point below average, but I'm okay with that. I'm chasing counting stats when I go to Bobby Witt at these prices at shortstop. MJ Melendez, great contact profile, no results really to speak of to show for it. Sal Perez, very cheap for his upside, $4,300, $2,900 for Sal. 17 home runs on the season. Not the greatest output for him this season. A 187 ISO is down, 10% below average creating runs, but we know that he mashes when he makes contact. So Sal Perez, if I'm going to Royals, is a priority bet. Then like Massey, Isbell can produce from the left side a little bit. Edward Olivares can produce a little bit of power and a little bit of speed. Any one of those guys could hit you a double and steal a base. They're unlikely sources of home runs. Everybody in the below 5 range in the home run model. Everybody in the low to mid single digits for home runs this year. So it's not a great bottom end for the Royals by any means. But like you can sprinkle in some Royal stacks. That's what got me to the top yesterday. Sprinkled in a couple of them and it paid off. That's what when I talk about getting to a broad range of these teams, that's why you get that one team that combines with everything else that you were doing across a lot of lineups. I don't know how many shares of Royals, but I did go back and check. That was the last one of my ranked Wheeler stacks that I grabbed. There was a bunch of Wheeler stacks that I left in the sorting tool, but that was the last one where I stopped. And so got the little stroke of luck there, and you need luck to make it to the top of the standings as well. But that's why you do go to a lot of these teams and a lot of these spots for differentiation purposes. Mix them into a handful of lineups in combination with something else good, and it typically tends to pay off. So that's the approach. So this one is enthusiasm for Bailey Ober, enthusiasm for twin stacks, even though they'll be popular. No real interest in Jordan Lyles, only minor shares, drips and drabs of the Royals. Guardians against Mike Clevinger. Mike Clevinger hasn't pitched in the show since mid-June. I don't see him as an option. I think he's going to be limited 70, 75 pitches. 7,000, 7,500 wasn't really pitching well to begin with. 19.3% strikeout rate, allowing 3.28% home runs, 3.88 ERA, but a 5.49 xFIP is much more truthful. Walking 9.5%. I don't really see Mike Clevinger going out and posting a dominant game in 75 pitches, especially not against the low strikeout Guardians. 16.6% strikeout rate for this team on the season. I don't need to go to shares of Mike Clevinger here. If it burns me, it burns me. If I lose to Mike Clevinger today, I lose to Mike Clevinger today. I think he got me once earlier in the season. Maybe that was late last season that I'm thinking of. But there was somewhere along the way that I was like, oh, damn, Mike Clevinger had a weird day and actually did well, and I didn't have him. But other than that, don't really care. Logan Allen on the other side, though. 9,000, 9,100, a decent price for his projection here. That's an okay projection at value. It's not great, but comparative to the top of the board and then comparative to where things kind of fall off the table, I think Allen's in play. What you worry about with Allen is those short starts that he was running into, but he pitched a decent game in the last outing. He went 7 innings, faced 29 hitters, struck out 5. It wasn't a great game. He allowed 2 home runs, 7 hits, 4 earned runs against the Royals. But I think there is upside for him. He's been very good in most of his starts this year. 74 and a third, 14 starts, 23.7% strikeout rate, a 3.39 ERA with a 3.95 xFIP, only allowing 2.49% home runs. He's not bad. He's maybe not a flamethrower, like knock him down, drag him out kind of a strikeout pitcher, but he's a good enough strikeout pitcher, better than 1 in 5. I like the spot for Logan Allen. I've grabbed some White Sox stacks as well. They're showing a lot of power through the middle with the 3 obvious guys, Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, and Jake Berger, with all their premium upside at the plate. Everybody else is kind of underperformed on the season. Like Andrew Vaughn's been good, but 12 home runs, a 175 ISO, only a 102 WRC plus. I think they were expecting a little bit more from him. 46.1% hard hits is good, 9.2% barrels is good. He's very playable at 3,600, 2,900, but he hasn't given them exactly what they were hoping for this season. Yasmani Grandal, kind of a down year for him. 8 home runs is okay, only a 318 on base is uncharacteristic. He's usually better at getting on base, usually draws more walks than that. 12% walks last year, had a 420 on base percentage 2 years ago with a bunch of home runs, but hasn't been that guy the last year and a half. Oscar Colas does have cheap upside as a power-hitting rookie. Only 1 home run in 143 plate appearances so far for him, though. Outfielder, very cheap if you're building a bunch of White Sox stacks. But I think this leads me more toward the Logan Allen side. So it's really just a hedge position with some White Sox. Grab some of the power in the middle of the lineup. Let's see where they rank in the stacks tool. Yeah, they're ranked 21st overall by projections, but they rank 7th for power, for home run upside based on these 3 guys. So that's what we're looking at the White Sox for. So maybe it's a mini stack, maybe it's a 3-man with those guys, and you're looking for, the big Jake Berger 3-run knock, or maybe 2 of them go off for home runs and the other guy provides some correlated scoring in that group. You can build it out to full stacks for sure, and I think I would. But it's not one to get carried away with, given the kind of low-end projections. They're obviously dragged down a lot by these bottom guys, right? Oscar Colas does have power potential, but doesn't project well. Zach Remillard doesn't project well. Tim Anderson's been brutal all season long. Doesn't really project well right now. 2.99 in the home run model. You don't have Andrew Benintendi bringing up the top of the lineup today. He's only been okay this season, but has been better than Tim Anderson. I still believe in Timmy. I'll have him in my stacks. He's difficult to recommend to other people at this point, though. He's been brutally, brutally bad. 45% worse than average creating runs. 0 home runs on the season. Hasn't stolen a base in a really long time. It's not been pretty. Jean Moncada hitting second, I like, ahead of that power core. And then Vaughn. Like, these 2 guys, the 2 and the 6-hitter would be my preferred bolt-ons for these 3 guys. Just roster it in a straight line, basically. Any of the other parts can be bolted on, but it's not a premium spot. Prefer Logan Allen. On the Guardian side, they've been a lot better. They're carrying a 5.08 run implied total when I wrote the article. Could have gone in one direction or the other, but going up against Mike Clevenger, there's a lot of reason to believe in the Guardian stack here. So him being on the mound definitely leads me to Guardian stacks. I think I will have a fair amount of them. They're easy to build with. They're very cheap. They've been more productive lately. They've got 1 star in the lineup plus a B+ player in Josh Naylor. He's been an A- maybe this season. 309, 349, 510, a 201 ISO, 15 homers, a 131 WRC plus that leads the team. Jose Ramirez has been better, but not by a lot. 13 stolen bases. When you mix that into Naylor's 6, that gives him a little bit of a lead. 127 WRC plus to Naylor's 131, a 205 ISO to Naylor's 201, 492 slugging to Naylor's 510. Higher on base, but not by as much as you'd expect. A lower batting average. More plate appearances. Obviously, the better of the 2 players over time. I'm not arguing that Josh Naylor's as good as Jose Ramirez, but I am saying that they've produced similar numbers this year. Very playable parts in the heart of the lineup there. Then you get everybody else in the lineup. Stephen Kwan, 101 WRC plus on the season. We expected him to get on base about 30 percentage points better than he has been. 344 on base is good for a guy who also hits for power or does other things. For a guy who doesn't really do anything else at the plate, he needs to get on base 30 percentage points higher than this. Then he would have a decent WRC plus. He's playable where he is. 4,200, 3,100 in the outfield. Playable part. Andres Jimenez is a good player, I think. Has been struggling along this season, but 9 home runs, 17 stolen bases. Up to a 92 WRC plus in a much better spot in the lineup, and he's still cheap at 4,000, 3,000. So I like these 3. I prefer, I think, Josh Bell. Stephen Kwan's a better correlated scoring piece, but Josh Bell's got the higher ceiling. Josh Bell's the guy who might hit you a 2-run homer, hit you 2 home runs, whatever the case may be. 3,000, 2,800. He's a decision point with Josh Naylor in the lineup on DraftKings, though. I've talked about it a bunch of times. It's kind of the same thing I was saying where with the Polanco play, where getting Bell, I would imagine, given that Naylor's been the much better of the 2 players, he'll be the more popular, even though Bell's cheaper. So you can create some differentiation in the lineups just by mixing those 2, going to the less likely guy in whatever scenario you've built, because the public will probably go to the other guy in that scenario. So, like, if you've got a lineup that's tight for cash, and you've got that first base spot open for a Guardians player, maybe try and fit Naylor in and spend less at like pitcher or something like that, like use a pay down pitcher and use Naylor where somebody else might have gone to the cheaper first baseman and used a pricier pitcher. Just try and make the opposite decision to what the field's doing between those two guys. There is upside with Bell. He's got 11 homers on the season, a 99 WRC plus. Guy who hit 27 home runs 2 years ago, does have a 9.7% barrel rate, 42.4% hard hits. Bottom of the lineup, Brennan, Freeman, Straw, all kind of mix in mediocre type bats. Bo Naylor does have some power at catcher, 2,900, 2,600. Cheap playable part at catcher. It's really 1 through 5 for the Guardians, but I think based on the opponent on the mound, based on the implied total in Vegas, there's a lot of reason to build with some of these playable parts down the bottom too. You just mix and match those guys in combination with these guys. So that one was, how did I write it up? Yep, that's how I wrote it up, and that's exactly how I was going to put it here. It is some some Guardians bat stacks, followed by Logan Allen as a mid-level option, followed by some White Sox bat stacks, but more of a hedge position with them, but I do like the power through the middle. Good power opportunity here. Just given how good those guys are at hitting home runs off of left-handed pitching. It's not like Allen's been bad at giving up power this year. There's a little bit of premium contact, 8.7% barrels, 39.3% hard hits, but again, only 2.49% home runs. So the power upside's coming from their individual ability in that spot, which I like, which is something to go for. Nationals, Mets. This one's got that rain in the forecast, but I think we play. Still looks nice outside as we come up on 4:30. Granted, this game doesn't start for another 2.5 hours, but it still looks nice outside right now. It's the best I can do. I forgot to change Luis Garcia and Will Smith again. Hold on. Let's do this real quick. Good old Luis Garcia and Luis Garcia. And that gives us back Luis Garcia on FanDuel. And then we got to do it over here. That's the infielder. Okay, and we'll do Will Smith while we're here as well. I really wish they would come up with a solution for these things. Like, hey, maybe we don't need a pitcher who's injured for the entire season, a pitcher who is never DFS relevant, and another pitcher who's never DFS relevant in the player pool at all. Like, why Will Smith, the relief pitcher from the Padres, is in the player pool is completely beyond me. But anyway. All right. Not that afford Luis Garcia a projection because it's still screwy in the back end for whatever reason. And there's somebody else grabbing his spot in the stats too now, which is a pain in the ass. But anyway, he's just a mix and match piece anyway in the infield. Like, he's not that good a player, so it doesn't really matter. 3,400, 2,600, you can play him to your heart's content. I don't prioritize Luis Garcia even when I'm building national stacks. I will have some national stacks here, but it's really about the top few hitters in the lineup. C.J. Abrams is good. Lane Thomas is good. Imer Candelario's an okay power hitter from both sides of the plate. 4,100, 3,000 for him. Third baseman, I don't love putting a player like him at third base, but he does have a little bit of pop. 16 home runs on the season, a 224 ISO is very good. Only 7.2% barrels, 38% hard hits. A 118 WRC plus is good at second on this team. Joey Meneses, fine. Dom Smith, pretty weak option there. Stone Garrett's in the lineup. Riley Adams is in the lineup, even though it's a righty on the mound. That's interesting, unless the Mets didn't change their pitcher, did they? Nope. So that's kind of interesting, getting those two guys against a righty. They specialize against lefties, both of them, but playable parts. They're having okay seasons. Most of their stats, Garrett and Adams down here, have come against left-handed pitching. But they're playable parts. 108 WRC plus and 203 plate appearances for Garrett, a 140 and 95 plate appearances. Cheap catcher for Riley Adams. But we lose Keibert Ruiz out of the lineup, which kind of sucks. He's one of my favorite bats in that Nationals lineup. So dropping him out of the top of the lineup and replacing him with Riley Adams at the bottom against a righty, not exactly ideal. So really this National stack is like a 4-man off the top and then like a couple really low-end mix and match ports down here. They're only an option because Carlos Carrasco has not been good at all this year. 16.3% strikeout rate, a 5.82 ERA, a 5 xFIP, 91.3 miles an hour of exit velo, 10.5% barrels, 4.25% home run rate, it's just a spot where I think you can throw bats at this pitcher. So while it's not a great team, I do think there's an option to maybe grab some Nationals bats. I think the priority is probably on the Mets side of things here, though, going up against Patty Corbin. 3.54% home run rate for Corbin and 45.2% hard hit rate, 91.1 miles an hour of exit velo. All of that is actually improvement upon the last couple of seasons. A 5.01 ERA is very targetable. 4.49 xFIP is not much better than the ERA. It's more respectable, but it's still not good. 15.8% strikeouts. The only thing he's doing well is not walking people. 6.7% walk rate, but he still has a 1.55 whip. So he's giving up way too many hits, just way too many opportunities. I think you could throw Mets bats at Patrick Corbin. He's going to fall into exactly what they do well at the plate, too. So you've got Brandon Nimmo up at the top, Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso with all their power. Alonso, all of a sudden, 30 home runs. Snap that slump pretty aggressively. He's back up to 220. 317 on base, 514 slug, 294 ISO, 128 WRC plus. There were a few weeks there where Pete Alonso wasn't hitting after he came back from that injury, and he came out of it in a big way. Francisco Lindor, 19 homers, 17 steals. That's good. Everything else hasn't been great, but still above average for run creation. He's priced down at 4,800. Getting a Lindor and Alonso pairing for 4,800 and 4,900 on DK is a very significant discount on those two hitters, by the way, especially going up against Patrick Corbin. That's a killer spot for when we're talking about price discounts. 3,800, 3,900 is discounted on FanDuel, but only a couple $100. On DK, they're 1,000 or more too cheap in this spot. So 2 star players for very cheap prices there. Tommy Pham is a capable fourth hitter in that lineup. 3,300, 2,800, 9 homers, 11 steals for Pham. Possibly on the trade market, might have played his way out of town, but played his way into the full-time role before he played his way out of town. Having a nice year, 12.6%, barrels, 47.4% hard hits. I like Pham in that spot. Don't love Jeff McNeil when he's hitting 5th, 3,700, 2,700. He's a playable part, but he doesn't do much in that role. I like Kana a little bit better for 2,800, 2,500, probably lower ownership. Francisco Alvarez, obviously a star catcher. He's too cheap at 3,800 with his ridiculous power upside. Mark Vientos I've talked about a few times. Major power prospect. 2,400 at first base on DK. Still got to decide between him and Pete Alonso, which isn't much of a decision. 2,300 on third base on FanDuel, a lot better of an option over there. And then Danny Mendick, kind of a slap-hitting defender to round out the lineup. So the Mets really 1 through 8 with kind of a meh at 5, in my opinion. So call it just call it 1 through 8. I don't want to nitpick on Jeff McNeil. He's very playable in that spot in the lineup for cheap prices. So it's a definite enthusiasm about the Mets. No real interest in either one of these pitchers. You could maybe succeed with value shares on either side. They are both experienced guys who have been once upon a time good prospect or good veteran pitchers, but they're both, I think, kind of done with that role at this point. Neither one's been very good at all this season, so I'm targeting them with bats here. But if you wanted to throw a couple value darts, I wouldn't tell you were making a total mistake. I would probably prefer Corbin, even though Carrasco's got the better matchup against the Nationals. It's very, very thin, though. You can see Carrasco projects a little bit better, but it's very thin. And then much more enthusiasm about the Mets lineup than the Nationals lineup, but both are very much in play. Mets were fairly high on the projections board, I believe. Mets ranked 5th for projection, 4th for home run upside against Corbin. Nats, not so much. Nats, where the hell are they? Did I leave a team on? Oh, no, they're there. 23rd ranked. That's why I couldn't find him. 21st ranked for home run upside. And that's with the version of the lineup that had some better players in it. So they probably plummeted. Yanks against the Orioles. Let's see if we got the lineup in for the Yankees. We've got the Dodgers, the Cubbies, the Rays, and the Yankees in. All right. We are rolling. Yanks lineup. Pop it in here. Might as well grab the Rays while I'm here. Come on. Hang in there, gang. Interesting matchup pitcher-wise in this game in Baltimore. My Yankees going up against the Orioles again. Not as crazy hitting conditions in Baltimore, but still a fairly humid day. Wind blowing out. So I think there is definitely some hitting opportunity. But I kind of like both pitchers. I like Wells for the Orioles a little bit better going up against the scuffling Yankees than I do Clark Schmidt with his questionable depth going up against the Orioles here. but I think it's an interesting spot that we'll get into momentarily as soon as I finish copying these last two lineups. Dodgers, here we go. Miguel Rojas creeps back into the lineup. No Ahmed Rosario for the Dodgers. Why acquire him if you're going to play Miguel Rojas over him? Doesn't make sense. Maybe he's just getting a day off. Anyway, let's get back into this one. So as I was saying, I think there's good upside for Tyler Wells. 9,600, a little bit pricier than he probably should be going up against the Yankees, but he's been pitching very well this season. 8,600 on the FanDuel slate is a bargain basement price. That's a really good price for a kid with a 25% strikeout rate, a 3.65 ERA, a .99 whip, and 11.1% swinging strike rate. The problems for Tyler Wells crop up around his 11.4% barrel rate, his 5.23% home run rate on a 21-degree average launch angle, going up against a team that's got Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, to a lesser extent Gleyber Torres. There are some major home run threats in this lineup. You can see Aaron Judge leading the world with a 21, more than doubling up the magic number in the home run model. Judge, I know we talked about it yesterday, timing at the plate and everything, looked pretty good to me at the plate. He swung and missed at a few pitches, but his timing didn't look off. It just looked like typical Aaron Judge, just swinging to just hit the stuffing out of the ball kind of swings. I don't think Judge was or is very far off from hitting his stride here. And we're talking about a player with he also got on base twice last night, I think, drew 2 walks. So 290, 410, 670 overall for Judge, a 381 ISO in his 217 plate appearances, 19 home runs, still makes him one of the higher home run totals on a pretty big slate. 30.2% barrels, 62.9% hard hits, having missed half of this first 2/3 of the season. Those are monster numbers. It's Aaron Judge, 6,000, 4,200. He's totally worth it. But I do think there's upside for Tyler Wells, given the strikeout potential in this Yankees lineup. Judge strikes out 29% of the time. He also walks 17.5%. Stanton strikes out 23.6%. Rizzo striking out too much. DJ LeMahieu is striking out way more than he ever has in his career. There's a lot of Ks to be had here. So I do think there's upside for Tyler Wells. But I'll have some stacks of Yankees on the other side. They rank out pretty well in the tools. They were the 16th ranked team by overall collective projections because they've got a lot of guys at the bottom of the lineup like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, DJ LeMahieu, Kyle Higashioka, and Anthony Volpe even that drag down the overall projections, but they're the number 2 team on the board for power. That's partly dragged up by Judge, but we've also got Stanton, we've got Rizzo and Gleyber at decent numbers. Down the bottom of the lineup, Harrison Bader pretty sneaky at cheap pricing. Even Anthony Volpe, inconsistent contributor, but he does have 13 homers on the season. He does have a 44.1% hard hit rate. Higashioka's got the great contact profile that we talk about a lot. 11.2% barrels, 46.6% hard hits. It's only amounted to 5 home runs and 175 opportunities, but he's going to have more consistent playing time now. With Trevino done for the year, Ben Rortvedt is going to be backing up Higashioka unless he wins the job. I do think there's a little bit of competition to see who gets it more regularly, but right now Higgy's got to be in the lead. He's also very, very cheap at $2,100 on FanDuel, so as a differentiator in this lineup, that does help. Triple position eligibility on FanDuel for these two guys also helps for LeMahieu and Kiner-Falefa, but Kiner-Falefa is a really low-end option. 256, 317, 372, 92 WRC plus, only a 116 ISO. Just a really inconsistent contributor. Okay glove in the outfield, but not a good contributor. Clark Schmidt, 7,700, 7,800. That puts him on the value board at a decent mid-range projection here. There's not a huge peak for the pitching projections today. It peaks in the lower to mid-30s, I think. I don't think anybody cracked 40. And there's a more broad range. It's more like guys in the high 20s type of a range, and there's a lot of those guys. So it's a slate that's broader than it is tall overall. And I think Schmidt falls into that bucket of guys at these prices. Good value numbers on both sites. He doesn't give you a ton of depth. A lot of his starts have been 5 innings or less. Only 2 of his starts have gone into the 6th inning. So it's a question mark on the quality start. Needs to find some strikeouts against a pretty good Orioles lineup. They've got a 22.1% strikeout rate across this lineup. I think you can target Clark Schmidt a little bit more than you want to use him, but I do think a couple value darts are in play. He's got a 22.5% strikeout rate, a 4.33 ERA, a 4.35 xFIP. So he basically is what he looks like on the surface. He's giving up a little bit too many hard hits at 43.7, 3.48% home runs, 9% barrels. Good reasons to go to the Orioles on the other side. So this is kind of a four corners game. Definitely more interest in Tyler Wells. Probably, let me think about how I rank it. Let me talk about the Orioles first. Adley Rutschman in the leadoff spot today. Gunnar hitting behind him. That's an interesting configuration. You get Adley's on-base percentage hitting ahead of the power core. I actually kind of like that. 15.9% strikeouts, 13.8% walks, a 368 on base for Adley. And he's still got plenty of power at the plate as an affordable catcher at 5,200, 3,100. I like that spot quite a bit. They've done nothing but win since his promotion. They were showing the stat during the game last night from like 2017 till he was promoted in... was it late 2021 or was it last year? I think mid last year. Just a well under 500 record and then well over 500 since his promotion. They've just been playing lights out ball, and he's the team leader with how he works with the pitching staff and everything he does at the plate. I like that spot quite a bit for Rutschman. It makes a lot of sense to put him ahead of Gunner's power. 4.62 in the home run model, but a 53.5% hard hit, 11.2% barrels for Gunner, 16 home runs, a 222 ISO. Santander, their most consistent power bat at the plate, 18 home runs on the season, a 216 ISO. Ryan O'Hearn playing way over his head. Maybe they figured something out. Maybe they unlocked something with this hitter. 188 plate appearances. He's kind of sustaining it. 302, 346, 523, up to 9 home runs, 221 ISO, 136 WRC plus, 11.9% barrels, 55.2% hard hits. What I like more about O'Hearn than some of those other Brent Rooker types is O'Hearn only strikes out 21.8% of the time. This isn't somebody who's doing that despite a 35% strikeout rate that'll come back to earth. Like if they've unlocked something with this hitter, that's kind of interesting. Lefty, very, very cheap still at first base. And as I've said a number of times, even if he does come back to earth, as long as they haven't raised his prices, it's not a mistake to roster him in the cleanup spot with a team that we're going to stack a little bit tonight. Mountcastle power for days in the 5 spot, 3,800, 2,900, too cheap for that hitter. 12 home runs on the season, a 193 ISO. Missed a lot of time. 14% barrels, 45.9% hard hits. That's the focus. Hits everything hard when he makes contact. So really like the opportunity for Mountcastle. Another decision point on DK where you get him and O'Hearn both at first base. Yet another spot where both guys are kind of important pieces in the heart of the lineup there. So I think that's another one where you can flex around some price, flex around some ownership, get to shares of both of them in your Orioles stacks, but use them as differentiators. Just makes a lot of sense. Adam Frazier, Austin Hayes, Colton Cowser, Ramon Urias, all playable parts. This Orioles lineup plays 1 through 9. It really does. Frazier's having a career year, 12 home runs, 7 stolen bases in his 326 plate appearances. Hayes, very good year, 9 home runs. Cooled off a little bit, down to 293, 332, 459, a 117 WRC plus overall. But they never raised his price. So he's just kind of still been cheap in the outfield. The contact profile is still fairly sturdy. Cowser is a premium rookie. Hasn't delivered anything in 56 plate appearances, but the next 56, the next 100 and change are going to be better. Ramon Urias, plenty of power for 2,300 at second base and third base on DK. 2,700 triple position eligible on FanDuel. So thinking it through, I'm going to say... I still don't know how I want it. How did I write it up? Default to what I said in the article. Tyler Wells, it makes sense. Tyler Wells... Yankees bats, Orioles bats, Clark Schmidt value darts. That makes sense. I was kind of trying to see if I could squeeze the Yankees ahead of Tyler Wells in my esteem, but given how he projects, especially at the FanDuel price, 8,600, that is a bargain price for a kid who's got a pretty good strikeout upside against this Yankees team. He also pitches fairly deep into games, 111 innings and 19 starts. That's pretty good. So I could chase depth. I could chase a win, a quality start here in Baltimore. Definitely get to bats on the other side. I do have the Yankees as a fairly high priority stack, just given the power upside at the top of the lineup, and they're also very cheap for their talent. Everybody else in the lineup helps average down Judge's price. Schmidt's just a value dart. Orioles stacks are in play as a decent mid-range option. They ranked... they rank lower than they should. I guess a lot of Frazier, Cowser, Urias dragging down that fantasy point projection. They're ranked lower than I would if I was just like listing teams and ranking them on the board. On the stacks board, they're ranked a little lower than I would have them. I'll give them a bump. Tampa Bay Rays, Taj Bradley on the hill. Houston Astros, Hunter Brown on the hill. I think Brown got mentioned in the chat a little bit before. Let me jump into the chat, see what's going on. I haven't been over here much. I've just been talking. Solid Pick says, you're a Yankee fan, right? Nah, I just wear this hat every single day. Yeah, I'm a big Yankees fan, bud. When is Dominguez coming up? I don't think this season. I think if they need to pull an outfielder from the minors, it's going to be like Esteban Florial or that Perriera kid. Dominguez, I think, needs another year or two of seasoning. We got time. It's a Saturday slate. We can screw around a little bit. Let me see. The bloom is also, kind of off. He's still only 20. Switch hitter. 12 home runs, 28 steals in double A this season, over 407 plate appearances. So, getting good power ratings or good prospect ratings, but not like extreme crazy prospect ratings like he was a few years ago when he was 18 and in the international complex, and everybody was just raving about like the way that he's built and all of that. So could still turn into something for sure. It does have good numbers in the minors this year. Only walks 16.2% of the time, is a great walk rate. Striking out 27%. That's not bad. Only a 142 ISO though. Only a 100 WRC plus. I'm trying to figure out where the holes are. 223, 349, 365, 289 BABIP. Yeah, some holes in the hit tool, it looks like. So probably got to work on the hit tool, which was always the knock on him. So I don't think we see Jason Dominguez this year. Maybe next. Still very, very young, though. 20 years old at AA is, you're still with the curve, slightly ahead of the curve. If he makes the show by the time he's 21, 22, he's right on pace for a normal, outstanding career as a prospect. So let's dig in here. Hunter Brown is very interesting to me in this spot. You can see both of these pitchers project fairly well. Taj Bradley's had a lot more bumps in the road, missed some time. I think there's a little bit more of a question about the depth of innings for Taj Bradley here as well. Hunter Brown is pitched as well enough to make you forget that he's a rookie for most of this season. 105 innings, 105 and a third, 19 starts, 27.5% strikeout rate, a 4.19 ERA, a 3.17 xFIP, 11% swinging, 2.7% home runs. A little bit of premium contact in terms of the hard hits and the barrels, but keeps everything down. 5.3 degree average launch angle is spectacular. So he's one of those guys that's just going to keep the ball down, keep it in the yard, and he's got good strikeout upside. So not Fromber necessarily, or not quite yet, but what a staff to be in for him to learn from Fromber and just learn to pitch to that exact profile. Already doing it very, very well. Only 8,800, 8,500. I like the spot quite a bit. The Rays have not been nearly as hot as they were to start the season. Some of these prices have come down. Some of these performances have cooled a little bit. There's obviously still a ton of talent in that lineup, so he's going to have to be good, but he's obviously cutting their home run numbers basically in half. A lot of these guys, everybody on the team below a 5, including Brandon Lau, including Wander Franco, Yandy Diaz, Randy Rosarena, Isaac Paredes, all these guys who have been hitting for a lot of power this season. Everybody's basically cut down by Hunter Brown's talent here. So I like the spot for Brown. I feel like he's probably going to get a little bit of popularity just given the bumpy slate for pitching and a fairly effective price here. With or without popularity, I think we're going to go to this spot. On the other side, Taj Bradley, there is upside there given the 30+% strikeout rate. I do question the innings, though. 3 straight starts, exactly 5 innings, despite pitching fairly well. Hasn't pitched in the 6th inning since June 21st. Only done so twice this season. A lot of the starts fell short of even 5 innings. I don't love the spot for Bradley in terms of the depth, but this is a 5-inning projection that I've got on him. So he does have a good high-end projection in terms of the strikeouts. 30.4% strikeout rate on the season, a 5.30 ERA, but a 3.32 xFIP is a lot better than that. He's given up a lot in terms of the home runs. xFIP takes out of the equation. 9.3% barrels, 46.9% hard hits on a 17-degree angle, 91.6 miles an hour of exit velo, 4.17% home run rate. Going up against an Astros lineup that has a lot of home run potential in it. So between the short start, the home run potential, the need to find a lot of strikeouts in a hurry, I just don't love the spot for Taj Bradley here. I think he could succeed. I think I will have a few shares given the low pricing on both sites and the potential for, if he does get that 6th inning, we've got a little bit more path to a good strikeout total, path to the bonuses. If he's only getting 5, this is what he's projected for. I think he falls right around this number, especially on FanDuel where he'll fall short of the bonus. It's playable, but it's not great. Low ceiling kind of playable. High floor, low ceiling maybe, with the possibility of just falling through the floor entirely if he gives up 2 home runs and gets yanked after 2 innings. Astros bats going up against the contact profile there. I do think they're playable. Altuve and Alvarez back in the lineup just completely changes the shape and the nature of this lineup. They're 2 excellent players. Altuve's got 6 home runs, 5 stolen bases this year. He hit 28, I want to say. 28 home runs, 18 steals last year in 604 plate appearances. He's still a star at second base. 150 plate appearances. He's 37% better than average creating runs. Pena has scuffled through the season. 10 homers, 10 steals. 18% worse than average. Probably miscast in the 2 spot in the lineup, but I feel like they're just putting him there to maybe try and get him going a little bit. Kyle Tucker's power for days, 18 home runs, 19 steals, 48% better than average creating runs. Great season from Kyle Tucker. Really pulled himself together while Alvarez was out. Covered that absence pretty well for this team. Alex Bregman hits for a ton of power, 17 home runs on the season. Only 173 ISO and a weird contact profile for a guy with 17 home runs. 456 plate appearances. Maybe it's not the greatest total in the world, but it's a decent total. 5,300, 3,400. Good option at third base when stacking Astros. Let's put it that way. Maybe not a priority outside of Astros stacks, but a very good option when you're stacking Astros. Hitting cleanup today, too. Alvarez is obviously a dominant star, one of the best power hitters in all of baseball. Matches Bregman's total in half the plate appearances. 67% better than average creating runs while he was healthy. 19% barrel rate, 55.6% hard hits. Rivals Judge and Stanton for the best hard hitter or the best whatever you want to call that in baseball. So love Jordan Alvarez. Take the opportunity to roster him against a pitcher who might not be in the game all that long and is giving up plenty of power on this one. Jose Abreu, meh, but cheap. Up to a 40.2% hard hit rate, up to a 79 WRC plus. 21 points to go. Does he have a shot at creating runs for the at league average for the season? He does. Monster September and August would get him there. Chas McCormick's been really good. Still only 4,100 on the DK slate. That's kind of inexplicable. He's been good all year. 253 plate appearances, 13 homers, 11 steals, up to a 147 WRC plus. Really like Chas McCormick late in the lineup. He's been getting more popularity lately. On FanDuel, he's 3,500. Maybe that pushes people back away. I would imagine he's still going to be pretty popular at 41 on DK. Jainer Diaz has been good. He's still very cheap at catcher. Jake Myers has been okay. 7 home runs, 5 steals in a part-time role. 88 WRC plus. Not the greatest option. Myers and Pena are the more skippable guys. Pena obviously less so because of the lineup position there with all the stars. But it's a good lineup. It's one I'm going to go to against Taj Bradley here. Minor shares of Bradley. Definitely shares of Hunter Brown. Definitely some shares of Rays. They're ranked out pretty well in the spot. Tampa ranks out 4th by overall projection. A lot of the scuffles over the last month have more come in some decline in the home run numbers, but not yet in the fantasy point projections. Because they were so good to start the season, and there's a lot of guys who are good over time. So the fantasy point projection is still strong. This might be one kind of like I said for Baltimore, where maybe I would move them up a couple points if I was manipulating this manually. I might move the Rays down a couple of points, but not by a lot. Like they're not going to be much further down than like the Mets who are next, the Dodgers who are after that, the Phillies. I would probably swap them with the Dodgers. Like move the Rays to 6th and move the Dodgers to 4th. I think that might make sense. But I don't put hands on this thing to change those things around. I just give you the pure results of what the model says, and that's where they've got them. So I like the spot enough for the Rays that I'll have some. Don't love the home run part, but enough sequencing, enough run creation, the right opportunity to home run, plenty of stolen base upside. So you can go to the Rays. They're also not all that expensive. A lot of movable parts in that lineup. So it's probably Hunter Brown, Astros bats, Rays bats, Taj Bradley. Or no, I have to do that the other way around because of how they're ranked. Hunter Brown, Rays bats, Astros bats, Taj Bradley. Both bats are pretty close. The Astros were 9th on the board and 9th for power. The Rays ranked 23rd for power. So that's where the flaw comes in with Tampa Bay. So if you look across all those columns, it does kind of inform the whole picture, including the pitcher. A lot of talking. Let's keep this one rolling. A lot of games to go. Cubbies. Last night's hero, Mike Tauchman. Did you guys see that catch to win the game last night? Ball was gone. Tauchman brought it back over the center field wall. Hell of a catch. Hell of a catch from a guy that I've been calling a quad A player. I have been saying that because he is a quad A player when it comes to hitting. He is a very good defender. He has been for the entirety of his, brief spots of opportunity in the major leagues, and then presumably for his minor league career, he's also been a good defender. It would be weird if he was a good defender in the pros or in the show and not in the minors. But a quad A hitter overall. 5 home runs on the season. A 360 on base percentage is very good. He fits in with the team theme, given that they're very good at sequencing, very good at getting on base, creating opportunities for one another. And there's a bit of power through this lineup. So what I'm trying to say is Mike Tauchman's a flawed leadoff man, but you can play him in Cub stacks. And I think I want to have a lot of Cub stacks going up against Adam Wainwright. 6,000, 6,300 for Waino. He shot 11.3% strikeout rate, 5.79 xFIP, 3.64 home run rate. Just throw bats at Waino. Same story on the other side. I don't really see the need to go to Jamison Taillon here. 6,800, 8,000. Does have the odd game where he pitches really well. 20.3% strikeout rate is okay. A 4.67 xFIP is okay. 5.75 ERA, not so okay. 3.89% home run rate is pretty elevated. 10.8% barrels. There's reason to believe that the Cards will get to Jamison Taillon here. A couple of value darts, particularly on DK at 68, is okay. 8,000, I think, takes him out of play. Doesn't project well at all on the FanDuel slate. So for me, it's neither one of these pitchers, but definitely interest in both lineups. After Tauchman on the Cubs side of things, Nico Horner, still a little pricey at 4,800 on DK, 3,500 on FanDuel. Second base and shortstop, 25 steals, exactly league average WRC plus. Only a moderate amount of power. He's got 7 home runs, but it comes on 2% barrels, 32.9% hard hits. Not really a home run hitter. So that's why I feel like he's a little bit overpriced, but he's in a good spot in the lineup, fills a premium position where you can just plug his value in there. So I think he's okay there, especially when you put him together with Ian Happ, who's very cheap for his talent, 3,300, 3,100. Only 9 homers, only 9 steals, but a 376 on base, creating runs 15% better than average. Hitting ahead of Cody Bellinger, so he sets the table for Bellinger really well. First base and outfield for Bellinger, 5,100, 4,100. He's got 15 home runs, 12 steals, a 143 WRC plus, slashing 319, 369, 546 with a 227 ISO. Dodgers made a mistake by letting this guy go. Really hoping that the Yankees figure out a way to bring him over to the Bronx. He would be a perfect addition to that team. Love the bat. Really like Cody Bellinger in most of my Cub stacks. Seiya Suzuki is a capable bat. They've expected more from him than they've gotten this season. Only a 101 WRC plus, 8 homers, 5 steals, 256, 339, 391. He's better than that. He's better than that as evidenced by a 49.1% hard hit rate, an 11% walk rate this year. I think Seiya Suzuki's a better player. So for 31.29, I'm happy to go to him in the outfield. Decent correlated scoring at worst. Dansby's been underperforming this season in terms of his power output at the plate. He's typically going to be in the mid-20s for home runs overall. 4,600, 3,200. He's cheap at shortstop for his talent. Chris Morel, obvious power upside. John Gomes, obvious power upside. Nick Madrigal, not so much. More of a mix and match piece. The Cards. Brendan Donovan in the leadoff role. I like that spot. Triple position eligibility for 3,000 on the FanDuel slate. Dude's hitting 283, 364, 422. Creating runs 20% better than average. Lefty going up against Jamison Taillon. 2,600 second base, 3,600 second base only on the DK slate. Taking away the triple position eligibility or the multi-position eligibility limits him a little bit more, but second base is where you'd want him anyway. So it doesn't limit him that badly. What it does create is a decision point between him and Nolan Gorman on the DK slate. And if you're putting them in a vacuum, you obviously side with Gorman with all his power upside. It's a better spot in the lineup for Brendan Donovan, but Gorman's got a much higher ceiling than Brendan Donovan. 22 home runs, a 255 ISO, 123 WRC plus for Gorman, 14.6% barrels, 49.1% hard hits. Strikes out 30.7% of the time. Doesn't set the table like Brendan Donovan does. Donovan's got a 14.2% strikeout rate. Gets on base at a 364 clip. So very different players, but they lock one another off from DK lineups. You get multi-position on both of them on FanDuel, second base and third base for Gorman. So you can flex those guys all around FanDuel lineups. Goldschmidt, Arenado, stars on either side of the infield. 5,800, 4,000 for Goldie. 5,538 for Arenado. Too cheap in what might be one of his last games in St. Louis. There's talk that he's maybe going to the Dodgers, maybe getting shopped around the league. Who knows what's going on with Arenado, but in the lineup right now, cheap for his talent. 5,500 is a little bit too cheap on DK. 3,800 a little bit too cheap on FanDuel. 22 home runs to tie for the team lead at 233 ISO, 128 WRC plus. Newt Bar's an effective lefty bat for a cheap price, 37.33. 271, 377, 431. Creating runs 26% better than average. 10 homers, 7 steals. Productive player for cheap price, hitting between all these guys. Yes, please. Contreras, cheap catcher bat. Let's call him moderately productive. 16% better than average creating runs, 11 homers. Not really outstanding this year at the plate. Does have a good contact profile with 11.9% barrels, 46.7% hard hits. When you're paying this price, especially where you have to play catchers, that's a pretty good buy. 2,900 on FanDuel, you can definitely work him in as a movable part on that slate. Jordan Walker, Dylan Carlson, Paul DeJong from the bottom of the lineup. Plenty of upside in those guys. Carlson, probably the least effective option, 96 WRC plus for him. Does have 5 homers, 3 steals, and only 228 opportunities. Walker's been really good, cost 3,000 on both sites in the outfield. 268, 332, 430, creating runs 12% better than average. A little bit of power, a little bit of speed. And then Paul DeJong, veteran shortstop, 300 plate appearances, 13 home runs, a 183 ISO, exactly league average for run creation. Playable part. So, who did I have on top? Who's favored in Vegas? This was this was close to a pick'em. Call it a tie, really, between the bats. I'll say the Cubbies slightly, just because it's Waino and he's struggled so badly. And Taillon's a little bit better, a little bit more around like league average-ish type pitcher, where Waino is just like dead on the mound. So Cubs slightly ahead of the Cards, but enthusiasm about both of these stacks. Both teams totaled over 5. Basically a pick'em in Vegas. We do have some critical weather to bring back around. Let me reload this page, see if there's been any kind of update. Looks like it moved from a yellow-orange to a just orange on Mr. Roth's coloring system here. No change to the forecast, no change to the take that he had that I would have tried to paraphrase. So still questionable. Still one to keep an eye on. Plenty of time for it, though. Red Sox, Giants, 506. Lot to talk about. James Paxton, 39 fantasy points, leads the slate. 9,900, 10-4. Paying a premium for him on the FanDuel slate. I kind of like the price on DK. It's kind of the opposite situation of where we saw Aaron Nola at the top of the show. He was a little bit more expensive at like 11,000, I think it was on DK, and only like high 9s on FanDuel. So different situations. 29.1% strikeout rate for Paxton, 3.55 xFIP, a 3.46 ERA, giving up a 3.49% home run rate, a little bit of premium contact, walking 7%, inducing a 13.6% swinging strike rate. Kind of surprised coming back to basically full form after like not pitching for 3 years. But I do think there's upside here. I do think there's potential for Paxton to go out and have a pretty good game against this Giants team. 24.1% strikeout rate collectively against lefties for the year. 24.8% overall for this confirmed version of the lineup. Below average for run creation against lefties too. So I think it's a really good spot for some James Paxton shares. I imagine he's going to be pretty low owned on FanDuel given that price. Probably not the highest owned guy on the DK slate. Let's put it that way. Like mid-range type ownership I would expect on DK. You can hedge with a few shares of Giants, but they haven't been great against lefties this year. Kind of underperforming expectations against left-handed pitching, given that they do have some righties that kind of are known as specialists against lefties. That said, Wilmer Flores is an option. J.D. Davis is an option. Austin Slater in the leadoff role is a good option for correlated scoring. Patrick Bailey's kind of come back to earth over the last handful of weeks. 264, 297, 429 now. Below average for run creation. Matos is a hit tool and speed guy. Conforto suffers lefty-lefty a little bit, but 13 home runs on the season. Marco Luciano was my oddball home run pick, just given that he popped out at 10.37. We talked about him the other day. Premium bat for power upside potential, but a very, very questionable hit tool. So may just never put bat on ball at the major league level. But if he does, he might get us a cheap, sneaky, low-owned home run today at 2,700, 2,400 at shortstop. Casey Schmidt, Mike Yastrzemski at the bottom of the lineup. Yaz hiding at the bottom of the lineup is interesting against the lefty starter. That means he'll probably play the full game, and maybe you get him against righties out of the bullpen. Maybe he has a decent day against Paxton. So really like the spot for Paxton. Anthony DeSclafani following the opener. I think it's Ryan, what's his name, as the opener? Walker. No interest in him. Probably only going to go an inning. Then DeSclafani, 7,300, 7,100. Maybe a playable part at those prices, but I don't think you need to go there given the questionable innings. He wasn't great in the bulk relief role the last time they did it. They've only done it once with him. Everything else has been a traditional start. In the traditional starts, had a 4.88 ERA, a 4.15 xFIP, a good low walk rate, but only 18.9% strikeouts, a 3.58% home run rate, 44.6% hard hits. I think we'd be going to Red Sox bats even in a traditional Anthony DeSclafani start here. So I see no real reason to lean into him even at cheap pricing in a spot where he's going to be the bulk reliever. So I'm going to Red Sox bats here again. Tristan Casas moving into the 4th spot in the lineup. I like that a lot. Been calling for Casas major second half. 16 home runs on the season, a 130 WRC plus, 235 ISO. Having quietly a very, very good year for Boston. 25.1% strikeouts, but shaves that down with a 14.3% walk rate, 15.3% barrels, 47.8% hard hits. This kid still only costs $3,400 at first base on DK. He's hitting cleanup for the Red Sox today. Tristan Casas is a priority bet in and out of Red Sox stacks, to be honest. 3,300 on FanDuel, same story. 16 home runs on the season. I like that spot a lot. Hitting after Rafael Devers, ahead of Adam Duvall and Alex Verdugo. Justin Turner and Jarren Duran setting the table up at the top of the lineup. This is a really, really good 1 through 6 for Boston. Christian Arroyo, take or leave. Some shares at second base is fine for very cheap prices, but how often do you want him more than Justin Turner, who has second base eligibility on DK now for only $4,500? That's a huge piece of value on this team. Being able to put Turner at second base now for $4,500. He's hitting 286, 356, 476, a 190 ISO, 16 home runs on the season. It's Justin Turner. Having a Justin Turner style year, getting him at second base is a bargain for $4,500 on that DK slate. Still first and third on FanDuel for $3,400. Highly playable part over there. Devers is still discounted for the misperception, I'll say, of struggles. 264 is a little bit lower in the batting average, 331. Not creating runs as high a level as he has in years past, but still mashing in terms of the contact profile. Still 25 home runs. What are we doing making Devers $5,000, $3,900? That's too cheap. Particularly on DK. This is only too cheap by a couple hundred. This is too cheap by about 1,000. So, no real interest in the pitching on the Giants side. Minor shares as a hedge position with a little bit of upside and some love for Marco Luciano hiding down there in the lineup, but definitely more interested in the James Paxton side of the equation, given where he projects, given the strikeout potential, and then definitely interested in the Red Sox bats. Sox ranked 10th by projections, 7th by value on the DK slate, 14th for power, 10th for FanDuel value. I like the spot quite a bit for the Red Sox here. And now the Braves. I love the spot again for the Braves. What else is new? What changes? The only thing that changes here for the Braves is Travis d'Arnaud is in the lineup. If you guys are regular watchers of this show, you know that Travis d'Arnaud is near and dear to our hearts as the best backup catcher in baseball for power hitting. 9 home runs in 159 plate appearances this year. Had 18 in a full-time role over 400 and plate appearances last year. Has been a good power bat over time. Has an 11.2% barrel rate, 43% hard hits. In this role last weekend as our home run pick overall for the day, he delivered his 9th home run of the year. It's a downgrade from Sean Murphy. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a downgrade overall to the lineup. Like, he's still a premium bat at catcher. That's still an excellent option at catcher. So no real major ding to, like, you're not going to not go to Braves because Sean Murphy's not there and Travis d'Arnaud is what I'm trying to say. Player to player, they're a little bit of a downgrade, but he also costs way, way less than Sean Murphy does. So that's another discount bat to add to this collection of discount bats at the bottom of the lineup, who have all been performing really, really well this season. 19 home runs for Ozuna, 15 for Rosario, 10 for Arcia, and a 111 WRC plus from the 8th spot all year long for cheap prices. And then Michael Harris for still cheap prices. 9 home runs, 13 steals, up to a 105 WRC plus. And then all the ridiculous power up at the top of the lineup. They're going up against Julio Teheran, who was not relevant since 2019, before this year's 57 2/3 over 10 starts of general mediocrity. Not relevant since 2019, not good since 2016. So we're going on 7 years and change since Julio Teheran's really been a respectable major league pitcher. He's had a couple decent spots this year where it's been like, oh, that's a good handful of innings. But overall, 3.75 ERA, but a 4.73 xFIP, a 17.5% strikeout rate, allowing a 3.93% home run rate on 38.5% hard hits, 89.1 miles an hour of exit velo, typically on a fly ball trajectory, going up against these Braves. Look at all these home runs. That's a lot of guys. That averages to a 13.98 in the home run model for those top 6 hitters. Travis d'Arnaud included over the magic number. Just fire away with Brave stacks. One of the highest implied totals on the board. I think they were behind the Dodgers, but ahead of everybody else that's not playing at Coors Field. Yep. Several, like yesterday though, several good spots of more than 5 implied runs. So like all these green spots are over 5. So there are a lot of good spots for run creation again today. So I don't think we need to get like overwhelmed with Coors shares. I don't think we need to get overwhelmed with Braves and Dodgers when all these other teams will be lower owned in decent spots. But I want to have a hell of a lot of Braves and Dodgers at the same time. Dodgers leading the entire day despite not playing at Coors Field because these two teams at Coors Field suck. But there is a 12-run total there. Haven't updated this since I was writing the article earlier in the day, so some of it might be different, but probably not by a wild amount. The Brewers, kind of low end here. Going up against Bryce Elder, who's good at limiting power. Another one of those guys cuts barrels, cuts launch angle. 5.8% barrels this year is the exact same 5.8% barrels in 50 and change innings in 9 starts last year, allowing a 2.53% home run rate. I think it was 1 and change last year. 3.30 ERA, 4.22 xFIP, only an 18.1% strikeout rate. For 8,500, 8,700, he projects okay. He's in like the upper portion of the like upper middle type projection at that 29 on FanDuel, but I question the ceiling. He's more of a good real life pitcher than a premium DFS option most days. Caps out in terms of the strikeouts. There are not a ton of strikeouts in the Brewers lineup, 20.9% for the season. Nobody above 2 rings, 24%, and a lot of their better bats are low end. Carlos Santana in the lineup for them today. Acquired from the Pirates. I guess, was that a waiver deal or did they make a minor trade that I missed? I forget how that one worked, but Carlos Santana in the lineup today, 3,500, 3,200, 12 home runs on the season, switch hitter, a little bit of power still left in that bat, 99 WRC plus on the season. Sal Frelick hitting cleanup. Interesting spot for a kid, 3,600, 2,900, has been very productive over his first 23 plate appearances. We'll see what happens with him going forward, but they do like his bat. They do expect him to hit at the major league level. Willy Adames drops to 5th in the lineup, which is probably a more sensible spot for him since he's just so sellout for power focused, doesn't really get on base. He was just miscast up at the top of the lineup. So that's a better spot for him. Contreras hitting 2nd is okay. Again, he's not a premium bat, kind of like his brother, 114 WRC plus, 10 home runs on the season, hitting better than his brother, 272, 348, 435, a little bit more productive this year, 47.2% hard hits. A decent bat, definitely a priority bat when you go to Brewers, considering that as a catcher who hits 2nd in the lineup. Most of the catchers that are available hit down lineup. You do also have Caratini in the lineup in a sneaky 2-catcher configuration. So maybe on your DK stacks, if you're building with Brewers, which, again, I don't really see a great reason to, maybe Caratini sneaks in there instead of Contreras as a differentiator for a cheaper price. There is some home run potential in Caratini, 5 home runs in 148 plate appearances, 49.5% hard hits. I just don't love the spot for the Brewers, given how good Elder is at limiting home runs. That said, he has given up a few this season, so it's not entirely like he's going to take them away from this team. I just don't love going over the top for Brewers. I haven't mentioned Christian Yelich, my favorite player from this team. I do think you can one-off Christian Yelich, 5,400, 3,700. There's enough upside just in what he does on a daily basis, even if he doesn't hit home runs. 15 home runs, 22 steals, so 129 WRC plus, 53.1% hard hits. Knows how to get himself on base, stay involved. It's not a priority one-off by any means, but if I'm one-offing somebody from this team, it's probably him, then maybe like Carlos Santana, or maybe like a really weird, just like $2,500 Joey Weimer from the bottom of the lineup. 12 home runs, 11 steals for, it's Weimer, actually. Joey Weimer at the bottom of the lineup. I got to get used to saying it that way. I think that's how it's said. I've only heard it a few times. Either way, Joey's like a low-end option at the bottom of the lineup. 208, 290, 383. He's just outperforming Bryce Turang at the bottom of the lineup all year. Decent counting stats, but not great, but very low prices. So it's Braves all day long, enthusiastically. However, you can combine them in any combination of any of the players 1 through 9 in the Braves batting order. You are not making a mistake. Just can be overwhelmed with enthusiasm if you want to, but there are a lot of playable spots on this slate. So leave room for other options. Limited interest in the Brewers stack. Limited interest in Bryce Elder. No interest in Julio Teheran. Coors Field game. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Doesn't Teheran have reverse splits versus righty bats? He might. Jake Swells, it's not something I've looked into. It's just not a pitcher that has been really at all relevant in such a long time that I don't really think it matters, but I'll pull it up. Can I see that? Where's the easiest thing to check here? Versus righties this season, Teheran 17.2% strikeouts versus lefties 17.7%. Walking way more lefties at 7.1% versus the 2.6% he walks against righties. A 5.32 xFIP against lefties, a 4.18 against righties. I wouldn't exactly call him reverse splits one way or the other, giving up 6 home runs to lefties, 3 to righties in not that many innings. I just think he's a targetable pitcher. I'm not going to worry about splits or handedness against Julio Teheran. I'm just going to throw bats at him. It's the Braves going up against Julio Teheran. Let's not overthink that spot. Let's not overthink the Coors game either. I really don't think we need to go to shares of Chris Flexen at 8,200 on DK, 55 on FanDuel. I could not get him to project well no matter what I did. So I was trying to toy with it so that it would show at least like an idea that he might pitch more than a couple of innings. But nothing that I did mattered. So he's just bad. It's Coors Field. They're going up against the lousy Athletics lineup, but there's no reason to roster Chris Flexen, especially not at that DK price. There's probably an argument to be made that Paul Blackburn's got a little bit of value at 5,700 on the DK slate. 6,900 on FanDuel, I don't think you have to do it. Doesn't project great, but at least is approaching like a 20-point FanDuel projection. 22.2% strikeouts. A 5.06 ERA is not good. A 4.31 xFIP is a little bit better. Only 2.26% home runs. We know that Blackburn's got some talent on the mound. Not a lot, but some. 19.1% strikeouts last year, 4.28 ERA, a 3.89 xFIP, limited walk rate, limited power output. Maybe on the idea that the Rockies are terrible and all of this, any expectations for their offense is ballpark based. Maybe you get there with Blackburn for 5,700. It's really, really thin though. Know what you're doing when you make the play. At least put it that way. Make sure that you're using that salary savings correctly. But it's a really thin play. Bats on either side. 2 really low-end lineups, but playing at Coors Field, it was an 8-5 ball game last night. 2 Athletics hit home runs. Who was it? Geloff, who was our leader in the home run model yesterday and is again today for the A's. He had a home run, and Ramon Laureano had a home run. And then on the Rockies side, Randall Grichuk hit a home run. They scored 5. The A's beat him 8-5. 13 runs. It was right around the Vegas total. We're looking for not the Vegas total in all of these games, though. We want to obviously find the massive upside. That's a big total for a baseball game in general, but it's not a monster total for Coors, and I think we could be in line for that type of a game again. 7-6, 13 runs, 5-4, 9 runs, like not a massive amount of output because these 2 teams are just loaded with shitty players. Like, let's be honest. There are some good lefties in this Athletics lineup, though. They've got the rookies. They've got Geloff. Decent power mark for him. 2 home runs in his 50 plate appearances. Highly regarded rookie. They've got Seth Brown, who's a pretty good lefty power hitter. Below the Mendoza line, but 10 home runs and 211 plate appearances on the left side, and he's very cheap. J.J. Bleday, an okay lefty bat. 8 home runs and 236 plate appearances. 3,400, 3,200. Cody Thomas, left-handed rookie. Decently highly regarded. 1 home run in 32 plate appearances so far. 2,800, 2,700. Very easy to reach these A's. Probably going to be fairly popular given a pretty lofty total today. 12-run total, 5.98 for them, 6.14 on the other side. Shea Langoliers, Tyler Soderstrom. It's interesting if you get them both in the lineup with catcher eligibility. You can put Soderstrom at first base and play them both. They're both catcher only on FanDuel, but that doesn't make a difference. You can still play them both if you want to. Soderstrom's a highly regarded rookie. Hasn't done anything with 35 plate appearances, but that's an irrelevant sample. Langoliers hits for a little bit of power. 10 home runs in 332 plate appearances, a 10.6% barrel rate, 41.1% hard hits, but also strikes out at nearly a 30% clip. Not that we're really worried about that against Chris Flexen. So, some interest in the A's, primarily focused around the lefties, plus Zach Geloff. Tony Kemp, not really on that list, kind of a weird person to have just leading off for this team day after day. The way I put it in the article was that Tony Kemp and Jerkson Profar should go off together and open a 2-star restaurant somewhere and give these leadoff spots to more deserving players. Profar drawing a better projection, 3,900, 3,200 on the other side of this game. 7 home runs for him, but a 78 WRC+. Ezekiel Tovar's got a 78 WRC plus in the second spot in the lineup, but he's at least got a ceiling. He's a young prospect. We don't exactly know what he's going to turn into yet. Does have 10 home runs on the season. A little bit more believable upside for him at 4,200, 3,300 in the Rockies lineup. Ryan McMahon gets his upside back against a righty. Decent power potential, 12.1% barrels, 45.6% hard hits. 16 homers, a 202 ISO for McMahon. 11 homers on the season for CJ Cronin, a pretty small sample of only 216 plate appearances. We know that Cronin can mash when he makes contact. 16% barrels, 4,700, 4,000. 4,000 is pretty high on the FanDuel slate. I know it's a Coors game. I know they've got a 6+ implied total, but CJ Cronin's not exactly been great this season. 10% worse than average creating runs. Hit 29 homers in 632 opportunities last year, 28 in 547 the year before. Would be on pace to do that again this season, but not the most consistent guy in the world. 4,000 is a little bit high on FanDuel. 4,700, perfectly reasonable on the DK slate. Grichuk, good player, probably going to get himself traded out of Colorado. 305, 361, 485, 7 homers on the season. Okay power potential and hitting for more average than he used to, so a playable part. Nolan Jones I like a lot at 4,300, 3,600 at the later part of the lineup. Lefty bat, good power potential, 9 home runs and 177 plate appearances, 223 ISO. I like Nolan Jones a lot. I've raved about him several times on this show. Elias Diaz, good catcher, playable part. Harold Castro, playable part at cheap prices, triple position eligible on FanDuel. That gives him a ton of value at 2,800 over on the blue site. And then Brenton Doyle, 3,000, 2,900 in the outfield. Cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DK. Better bargain over there. Only good for some counting stats. 7 home runs, 14 steals on the season. Very inconsistent, infrequent contributor. But catch him on the right day, maybe he differentiates a Rockies lineup for you. So, very limited interest in Paul Blackburn value darts. If I was playing a full tournament on DK with 150 lineups, I would have 10 shares of SP2 Paul Blackburn, maybe. I'd probably push it to 15 so that I had like an even 10%. Not great. It's playable. He's good enough that it's playable, but it's not like we're booking a even 25% strikeout guy. I don't love it. The price is right. The price is right enough. So it's Rockies bats only slightly favored over Athletics bats. I don't really like either team, but it's Coors Field and there's enough upside to go to it. But I'll probably deprioritize it, especially if they're popular, just like yesterday. And then only if you're going to the pitchers, it would only be Paul Blackburn in very small doses. 3 games to go. 5:27. Doing okay on time. Bill Miner says, I spent a considerable time trying to get bets in my lineup and he gets scratched. Oh, Mookie got scratched? Big update there. Appreciate the heads up on that. Oh, I did have the A's and the Rockies lineups and I didn't update them. Let's see. Kemp, Geloff, Blade, Rooker. So Rooker's in the lineup for the A's. You get a little bit of power upside there, but let's be honest, he hasn't hit he's still got 16 home runs. You didn't hit one yesterday. So yeah, 16 home runs. 7 since the beginning of May after going crazy for April. He had a really good April. He hasn't been at all good since. Seth Brown hitting 5th. Loriano is back in the lineup. He's hitting 6th. Had a good day yesterday. Jace Peterson, Soderstrom hitting 8th. Nick Allen. So no Shea Langoliers for the A's. Soderstrom still interesting, hitting 8th. Nick Allen is a slap-hitting defender, hitting 9th. But again, it's Coors Field. He's cheap. For the Rockies, Profar, Ryan McMahon hitting 2nd. Grichuk hitting 3rd. CJ Cron hitting cleanup. Nolan Jones hitting 5th. Diaz, Tovar hitting 7th. Michael Tolga in the lineup, which is an interesting bat. Switch hitter, fairly cheap, decent amount of power upside at first base. And then Harold Castro hitting 9th. So a bit of a shakeup there. Still the exact same read on both of those teams, though. Very flawed opportunity. Very flawed teams in good opportunities given the course field of it all. So let me grab the updates here. I guess I could have just put those in and then talked about them, but I want to update the Dodgers before I forget when we get to that game. And then we've got Mariners and the Diamondbacks. We do have the Mariners lineup. I like the spot quite a bit here for the Mariners going up against Brandon Pfaadt. Kid is a decently highly regarded pitching prospect, but he really hasn't been very good this year. Limited sample, limited starts, has pitched a lot better in AAA this season included than he has in the show so far. 31 2/3, 7 starts, 18.5% strikeouts, 5.28 xFIP, under an 8.81 ERA. So I gave you the better number first that time, and it was an ugly number. 5.28 is a hell of a lot better than 8.81, but it's still really bad. 8.22% home runs, 90.9 miles an hour of exit velo, 48.6% hard hits, 12.1% barrel rate. That amounts to, I put the total in the article here. It amounts to 12 home runs allowed to 146 hitters faced. I just don't think Pfaadt is fully polished yet. I think he needs a little bit more time. In AAA this year, 27.1% strikeout rate, 3.71 ERA, but he's got a 4.85 xFIP in 60 2/3, 12 starts at AAA. It's a tough league for runs. It's a PCL team, so you got to take that with a grain of salt a little bit, but I think he needs a little bit more finishing. They were expecting him to contribute this year. He might be a year early. I think he will turn into a decent major league pitcher. For 6,200, you could certainly throw some value darts at the Mariners' high strikeouts. That would be the appeal. It's not great. It's really thin. It doesn't project well at all for me. I don't think I'd be doing it. I think I want to see it before I go to it. Last time out, he was okay. It's in here. I thought I put it in here, but maybe not. I really thought I put it in here. That's going to annoy me now. Last time out for Brandon Pfaadt, he went 6 innings, struck out 6, but allowed 3 home runs. That was the flaw I was trying to remember because I knew there were 6 strikeouts in 6 innings. That was against the Reds at Cincinnati, so maybe you forgive a little bit of the home runs, but there's still been a bit of a home run issue here. Given 8.22% over 31 2/3. Mariners, obviously, that's what they do well, right? It's a combination of factors. They hit home runs well. They strike out way too much, but he's not been striking anybody out like he should be, and he's giving up way too much contact, way too many home runs so far. So I think I'm leaning into the Mariners side of this one. J.P. Crawford, good correlated scoring piece with a decent on-base percentage ahead of Julio Rodriguez, who's back in the second spot in the lineup. 5,200, 3,700 is cheap for Julio. 17 home runs, 24 stolen bases, starting to look a lot more like last year's output. 111 WRC plus is down overall, still a worse than it was last year batting average, but 11.1% barrels, 51.7% hard hits. Hard hits are up a little bit this year for Julio. So a mixed bag of quality this year, but the counting stats are great, and there's obviously a huge, huge ceiling on the player. Gianni Suarez, 3,200, 3,100, up to 14 home runs, a 158 ISO, a 103 WRC+. Major source of power with 31 home runs in each of the last 2 seasons. Great career for power, 12.9% barrels, 45.5% hard hits. Obviously, plenty of strikeouts at 28.7%. That's true for Cal Raleigh at 26.1. Teoscar Hernandez at 31.7. Further down the lineup, Tommy Murphy at 29%. Might as well throw him into that bucket too. He's another premium power bat. Dual configuration of catchers here for the Mariners on DK. Yet another one of those decision points where for 2,400, Tommy Murphy does the exact same thing at the plate that Cal Raleigh does. He's hitting later in the lineup. He'll have a half a plate appearance shaved off of his projection. That's why he's a little bit lower than Cal Raleigh in the home run model here. He's got 7 home runs and 131 plate appearances. Raleigh's got 14 and 333. 275 ISO in the small sample versus a 201 in the larger sample. Raleigh's a premium switch hitting catcher, 3,900, 3,000. He's affordable on his own. But when you work in the idea of changing him up, making him and Murphy interchangeable parts with the discount that Murphy provides, that's a really strong value option late in the lineup. Really like Tommy Murphy here. Teoscar is very, very playable too, by the way. I know I mentioned the strikeouts, but I skipped the 16 home runs that he's got. Only a 173 ISO, 236, 287, 410. Hasn't been all that consistent this year. Still a 14.3% barrel rate, 49.1% hard hits. Ty France hasn't been quite himself at the plate. 247, 321, 365, only 7 home runs. Much, much better hit tool and correlation skills the last 2 years. 276, 344, 37 with 20 home runs last year. 291, 368, 445 with 18 homers the year before. So underperforming Ty France this season. But I still think you can work him in for cheap prices at first base. Cade Marlowe, a little bit of pop for a cheap price, 2,800, 2,400, 1 home run, 2 stolen bases in 15 plate appearances so far. Colt Wong's been dead at the bottom of the lineup all year. I'm going to fire away with Mariner stacks. I'm also going to grab some shares of Brian Wu, Brian, not Brandon. Brandon's on the other side. Don't like Brandon here. Like Brian here. Brian Wu, 8,300, 8,200, 28.9% strikeouts. Some of these numbers are pumped up a little bit because he had a bumpy 2 outings in a row, but I still believe in the talent. I think he's a very, very good young pitcher. Last 2 starts, he went... Wu had 2 bumpy outings in a row after a run of several high-end starts. He has given up 2 home runs in each of his last 2 appearances, though he still went 6 innings while striking out 7, but allowing 4 earned runs against the Blue Jays in his most recent start. Wu is a strong option despite a tough matchup. He projects well for his $8,200, $8,300 salary. This is me reading and making fun of my own writing. So I think Wu is definitely on the table given that premium strikeout rate. The Diamondbacks are difficult to strike out. They've got a lot of really good hitters, some good sequencing, some good power upside. So I will take shares of Diamondbacks on the other side. I do think it's a lot more likely that if Wu doesn't have a very good game for fantasy scoring at his price, he's probably just going to have like a mediocre game, maybe gives up a home run, a couple of runs. But the instances in which the Diamondbacks really light him up here, I think are few and far between. I'll have some, but I'm not going to go crazy with Diamondbacks here. I do like Geraldo Perdomo off the top, Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, Dominic Canzone for his cheap price, 2,100, 2,200, a little bit of pop in that bat from the left side of the plate. Lourdes Gurriel, 4,200, 3,000, another very good power hitter at a very cheap price, doesn't strike out a lot. So 1 through 6, I like this lineup a lot. Emmanuel Rivera, Jake McCarthy, playable parts down the bottom. Rivera's got a very good hit tool. McCarthy's coming around with his hit tool. He's got 23 stolen bases on the year. Playable pieces down there. Carson Kelly, take or leave him as a catcher where you need them. But again, I'm not going to go nuts with Diamondbacks. I like this lineup a lot better in a vacuum than I do in the spot against Brian Wu. Just doesn't... outside of the last 2 bumpy starts, he wasn't giving up much power. He was striking out a lot of hitters, and he had that kind of a pedigree with a high strikeout, low walk rate type pedigree that kind of fits in with what the Mariners' plans are on the mound and how they develop pitchers. So I like the spot for Wu. It could definitely go pop. I mean, there's reason for concern around those recent outputs for sure, and the Diamondbacks are a very good lineup. But I prefer the Wu side of it at cheap pricing and at low ownership. Mid-range play, not a go nuts with a play either. He only projects in that next tier of starters. So it was Mariners bats, Brian Wu, Diamondbacks bats, no Brandon Pfaadt for me. I get it if you want to throw Brandon Pfaadt darts at the Mariners strikeouts. I just don't think he's there yet. Rangers and Pods, we have the Padres lineup in. I will load it up here so that we can talk about it. Don't have the Rangers lineup quite yet. This one's a matchup of 2 veteran starters. We've got Martin Perez going for the Rangers. No interest in him whatsoever from me at 7,200. Just hasn't really been getting it done. He projects out okay just on some career history, but only okay in the very thinnest of senses, considering that he costs 7,200 on both sites. But there's not much on the bone for Perez. 15.1% strikeout rate, 5.14 xFIP, 4.91 ERA on the season, going up against the high-end Padres lineup, at least 1 through 5. I don't really see the need to go nuts with Martin Perez here. I know the Padres have underperformed the entire season, but fantasy-wise, there's still a lot of great bats right here. Ha-Seong Kim's having a career year for very cheap pricing. So for DFS purposes, 1 through 5 at the very least, I'm going to Padres against Perez here. I think it's a premium spot. They were carrying a 5.14 implied total, so they're one of those non-Coors, non-Braves teams, non-Dodgers teams that's still pulling in a pretty high total with a ton of talent in the lineup. Ha-Seong Kim, 4,000, 3,200, triple position eligible, second, third, and short on FanDuel. You're not going to play him very often over Manny Machado at third base, but you could certainly play him at second base in this lineup. I like that spot quite a bit. 14 home runs, 20 steals, a 128 WRC plus. Now leading off regularly ahead of Tatis, ahead of Soto, Manny Machado. Manny Machado up to 20 home runs. Looks a lot like Manny Machado all of a sudden. 214 ISO, 114 WRC plus, 237 ISO, and a 154 WRC plus for Soto. Tatis sitting at 18 home runs, 16 stolen bases, 225 ISO, 130 WRC plus. A lot of high prices there, but they're offset by Ha-Seong Kim. They're offset by Xander Bogaerts, who's very cheap for his talent, 4,400, 3,300 at shortstop. Sign me up for some Xander Bogaerts. It's not been great overall, but it's a long, very good career for Bogaerts. I am not worried about him. I think he'll come around as the next 2 months of the season close out. Cronenworth, Campusano, Gary Sanchez, Trent Grisham. Gary's my favorite bat. Everybody knows that out of that group. 3,400, 2,700. Dual catcher configuration with him and Campusano. Similar contact profile. Campusano's obviously fewer plate appearances, but 2 home runs. Decent little prospect catcher. I think you could maybe go to some shares of Campusano, but I prefer Sanchez in that spot. Don't love Cronenworth, but he's cheap enough for a guy who has a history of correlated scoring. Trent Grisham, same thing. Yu Darvish, 9,300, 9,800, carrying a similar projection to a lot of those guys like Brian Wu that we saw near the, in that upper middle area. So for 93, 98, I will take more shares of, not more shares, but like they'll probably level off where I'm getting a decent amount of Wu compared to where I get Darvish. 25.2% strikeouts for Darvish, over 101 and a third, 18 starts, 3.92 xFIP, giving up a 3.50 home run rate, walking 8.4%. He's got a 4.80 ERA. There's some bumps for Darvish for sure. Still pitching fairly effectively overall. Still is Yu Darvish going up against a flawed version of the Rangers lineup that has no Corey Seager, has no Jonah Heim in it. So maybe there's a little bit more upside for Darvish. But at price and projection, there's other spots I like better. I'll have some, but I won't have tons and tons. Unless it comes through in the sorting tool. Like maybe he's 0 owned in this spot and I get him more on that. But I don't think so. Not where he projects out price-wise. Good price for him on DK. 9,300 is a good discount for his overall ceiling. But it's not the greatest of matchups. He hasn't been pitching to that ceiling very often. So you're getting him about right for what he's done this season, I think. Rangers lineup, you can go to it, but at the same time, it's still Yu Darvish. So there's a healthy respect here. They were limited to a 3.97 total in Vegas, given the no Corey Seager of the lineup. Semien, Travis Jankowski. I don't think this got confirmed in the last couple of minutes. Nah. So projected version, Semien, Travis Jankowski. Nathaniel Lowe's been really good. Adolis Garcia's been really good. Josh Young's been really good. So still at least 4 very good players here with these guys. And then a lot of bolt-on parts, a lot of mix and match guys. 2 very good players at the bottom of the lineup, either of whom could climb up a few spots. They could reconfigure this for sure. Maybe hit Jankowski up top or let Ezekiel Duran climb to the top, move Semien down, or hit Duran second behind Semien like they did the other day. A lot of options in this lineup. So there's a lot of plays that I still like, and a lot of these guys are cheap. Like Ezekiel Duran, 3,500 on DK at shortstop is fine, but 3,000 on FanDuel, triple position eligible. Gotta like that for a guy hitting 287, 330, 490, 203 ISO, 13 homers. Playable lineup for the Rangers top to bottom. I prefer the Darvish part of it. So it's probably, where did I go in the article? Yep, Padres bats, Yu Darvish. I like it when it's still the same take. Padres bats, Yu Darvish, Rangers bats, and then no real interest in Martin Perez for me. I don't really see it. Like there's better values than that 7,200. He's just not done anything on the mound this year. Any contrarian takes on that in the chat? Scherzer got traded to Texas? Wait a minute. Is that somebody saying hypothetically, or did that break? Bill Miner says, I hate to say this, but I've got a feeling that Tehran is going to bring everything he's got tonight versus the Braves. He might surprise. He might surprise. But there's also like, if Tehran brings everything he's got, that's still not nearly enough to beat that Braves lineup, given how he's pitched, how good they've been. Willie K says, Kim Ha-Sung making us Koreans proud. Yeah, we say their names backwards in a lot of these cases, but hey, back to those KBO days, man. I love the Korean baseball players. I've got, the hell's the kid's name? Baekho Kang, or Kang Baekho, I guess. I don't know which the actual way to say that is. It goes back and forth in how they're written in American leagues and in these DFS sites. But yeah, I've got that kid who was raking for the Wiz, I think, the KT Wiz a couple years ago. Got some injuries over the last 2 years, but he's still like 21. I think he won the MVP 2 years ago or something like that. Like really premium kid who might end up getting posted in the next couple of years. So he's one of my dynasty kids that's stashed in the minors in that dynasty league. But yeah, love the KBO. Loved covering it during that weird COVID time. Staying up till 4 a.m. writing articles, talking about it with everybody in the chats for good old Stochastic. That was a lot of fun. And it's a good league too. It'd be cool if they expanded it by a couple of teams, get a couple more teams in there, but very fun league to watch. So we went through this one top to bottom, and we will move on to this last game of the day because at some point I do have to build lineups for the slate. It's coming up on a quarter till. Cincinnati Reds, Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers pulling the highest run total on the slate despite not playing at Coors because they're going up against Luke Weaver. 5.41% home run rate allowed on 43.1% hard hits, 11.2% barrels. The Dodgers didn't project as well as they probably should have for me, given that it's Luke Weaver here. Like I said, I would have moved them to fourth from sixth, but it's the Dodgers. It's kind of a no-brainer spot. At the same time, just like yesterday, I like the Reds quite a bit in this matchup. Going up against Emmett Sheehan, 17.1% strikeout rate, 12.4% walks in a very small sample of 29 and a third innings, 6 starts, 6.75 ERA, 5.96 xFIP. Another young pitcher that I think is just not fully polished yet. He projects out okay, but I'm going to probably just ignore this projection. I don't think I'm going to go to the Sheehan value shares, and I'm probably going to grab some Reds upside here. I love this Reds lineup. They've got Christian Encarnacion Strand pulling a dynamite home run mark for cheap late in the lineup. First base on DK, third base on FanDuel. Love the power potential from him. Spencer Steer in the lineup, Joey Votto, Jonathan India. You get Ellie and Matt McClain with this multi-position middle infield eligibility, multi-position on FanDuel where you can move a lot of these guys around. TJ Friedel's been performing well for cheap prices. Fraley's been performing well for cheap prices. Power and speed from both of those guys. India, power and speed for cheap prices. I like the spot for the Reds. They're a good value option. None of these guys are really, really priced up. So I think there's plenty of potential here for the Reds lineup. Going up against a AAA kind of caliber pitcher right now. So I'm going to both sides of this one in offense, and I don't really need either side for pitching. Dodgers lineup, no Mookie Betts. It's a ding for sure. You're taking one of the best players in baseball out of their lineup, but it's not like I'm going to say, I don't want the Dodgers now. Maybe they come down to a 5.8 run implied total. It's not going to really change the picture for the Dodgers here. David Peralta leading off. That's a good hitter to sub in for 3,100, 2,600. It's not like I'm saying if I want to sub in somebody for Mookie Betts, it's David Peralta and nobody else in baseball. But given their choices, that's a pretty good one. 3,100, 2,600 across sites, 7 home runs, 283, 320, 422, creating runs 1% better than average. I like Peralta there. Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Max Muncy, JD Martinez. Lots and lots of power. Low strikeout rates for 2 of those guys. High strikeout rates for Muncy and Martinez, but we don't care given the 25 home runs apiece, given the well above average run creation marks. Those guys mash when they make contact. The lefties in the outfield with Hayward and Outman continue the theme that they've been providing all through this season. Cheap pricing, decent little home run upside from lefties going up against a very bad righty. Chris Taylor with all his power, multi-position eligible at the bottom of the lineup. 2,800 triple position eligible on FanDuel. 3,200 double position eligible on DK. 12 home runs at 235 ISO from Chris Taylor this season. Against Luke Weaver, that's definitely an interesting spot. Miguel Rojas has been bad. This should be a Medros audio, but what can you do? So Dodgers like 1 through 8. You can mix and match Rojas if you get carried away with your Dodger stacks. If you're building 20 of them, put them in a few, but not a priority bat. 1 through 8, though, pretty high priority. Reds bats, pretty high priority. Neither one of these pitchers. For funsies, playing Steer instead of Cruz in red stacks on DK. I assume you mean Ellie in that. Yeah, look, Spencer Steer's been really good. He's a good player. Been really good this season. He's been better than Ellie in terms of WRC plus and things like that. There's not a major downgrade there. Major downgrade in terms of what they'll be, but not a major downgrade right now. Pitching board, as we said a few times, it's a handful of guys in the low to mid 30s, with Paxton topping the board at just below 40. But a lot of these guys project out pretty similarly. I question the innings upside for Taj Bradley. Don't love that spot against Houston. I like the pricing for the pitcher, and like we saw, this is a 5-inning projection, but I think this is also around his ceiling today. So he could hit that mark. He could hit the mid-30s in FanDuel scoring and provide that kind of a start on DK. But I don't think we get much beyond that. So I question his viability from this spot. All of these guys I like a lot. I'll have plenty of all of those guys. I hope to be over the field on 2 or 3 of those guys, depending on where ownership falls. I love the spot for Aaron Nola, particularly on FanDuel at 99. Love the spot for Hunter Brown at cheap pricing. Tyler Wells against the Yanks, plenty of value there, particularly on FanDuel for 86. Definitely going to grab some Yankees bats on the other side of that one, but Tyler Wells is definitely an option on this slate. Elder, another guy kind of, the ceiling is beyond this by a little bit, but it's not a great ceiling. He does give you the ceiling based on being able to get to the win and the quality start bonus. So there's a little bit more of a ceiling, I think, for Bryce Elder than there is for Taj Bradley, despite Elder being like 12 percentage points behind Bradley for strikeouts. Brian Wu, I like the upside. Tough matchup for him, but I do think there's potential there for 8,200, 8,300 to provide value. Darvish for sure on the boards, middling kind of a projection against a tough lineup, but a very capable veteran pitcher. You can take as much or as little as of Darvish as you want. Schmidt and Allen, different prices, but both in play for me at this 26, kind of getting into the middle of projections now. I mentioned not really liking Sheehan, don't really like Carrasco, don't really like Corbin. I think between the two, Corbin's probably the better bet, just because Carrasco's been so bad and Corbin's had a couple spots. Not that either one's been good. Perez, Quinn Priester maybe for a little bit of value at 68, 63, but it gets really thin around these value guys at the bottom of the board today. Not a ton of extreme values like we saw yesterday. A lot of play in the mid-range, a lot of play through like this plateau of scoring, but it kind of dies with Carrasco. Everybody here down. Questionable at best. You could see some good innings. You could see some innings of no scoring and a few more strikeouts than expected from a guy like Jordan Lyles. You could see Paul Blackburn succeed at Coors Field in a bad spot at a very cheap price. You could see Taillon succeed at a very low DK price. I don't like him at all on the FanDuel price. There's a couple of value options mixed in there. You could see Brandon Pfaadt have an okay game for strikeouts if he finds his form against the high strikeout Seattle lineup. He's not entirely out of play. The projection puts him out of play, but the value pricing brings him back. So a minor amount of upside, only really on DK as an SP2, but it's very, very thin. Pretty thin on the value pitchers. Clark Schmidt may be your best option, 7,700. All right, gang. That's about it. 551. I'm going to punch out. Jake Swales thinks Bradley nukes the slate. I don't know. You think he gets 6 innings? You think if he can get me to 6 innings, clean innings, book me the quality start on the FanDuel slate, I'm there. 5 innings on DK, if they find their way to a win, sure, but I do like Hunter Brown's upside and his potential to limit their win equity. So I don't know how much win bonus he has. I don't know how much he's going to go beyond 5 innings, given that he's been exactly 5 each of the last 3. I think they're managing his innings a little bit. I don't love it. Bill Miner loves the trade deadline. I also love the trade deadline. Jake Swales, I hope Soto gets moved, and I hope that it's to my New York Yankees. He is quietly the best piece on the trade market. Wonder if the Rays are going to pull the trigger on a deal for Eduardo Rodriguez. That would be an interesting acquisition for them. That's a good call, Jake. That's a really Rays-esque kind of an acquisition. Talented lefty, underperforms on the surface and has very good numbers beneath the waves. I really like that call. That's an interesting spot for him to land. Erod to the Tigers. You heard it from Jake Swales first. Excuse me. Erod from the Tigers to the Rays. You heard it from Jake Swales first. That's about it. Some good trade discussion and stuff like that going on in the chat. Bill Miner, yeah, this is me. Rotoscouts is all me. Rotoscouts.com is the website. All the content up there is free. So I've got a big, deep, long article that I do every day. Home run picks up on the site every day. Power index, which is based on the home run model every day. And a stack board that gives you the projection averages, the power index numbers, the value numbers, and the pitcher rankings. So a lot of content for free up on the site. There's also a free Discord linked in the description below the video. Hit the thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, Bill. And yeah, I'm no longer with Stochastic. Nothing but love for all the content-facing guys. Most of the back-end folks over there, just a little bit of a falling out with the main owner of the company, not Alex. But yeah, no hard feelings. Doing my own thing now, having a lot of fun. So I'm glad you found us, Bill. Let's see. There was a question in here too that I wanted to hit. Trey asks, 20 max, how many teams would I focus on today? Out of 13 games, 26 teams, there's not a ton that I would take off the board, honestly. It would depend on how things fall, but I really want to get to a pretty broad spread on this slate. That's why I like having 150 lineups to work with a lot more than only 20. 20, you do naturally have to cull some of these teams. So I might make some decisions around, like, I haven't looked at ownership yet, so it also makes it a little bit more difficult to answer. But like if you wanted to make a decision around Coors Field, that's an easy major differentiator to take out of the equation. I wouldn't take like a team like the Dodgers out as much as I would take out Coors Field, just because these are two really low-end ball clubs and you're only playing the ballpark. The Dodgers, you're playing the pitching matchup. There's all kinds of reasons that the Dodgers are so good. Same thing with the Braves, same thing with some of these other high-end teams. So maybe you make a decision around Coors, and then maybe you pick off some of the lower-end options, like say the Nationals, although they were in a decent spot against Carrasco. So this is going to suck because I'm going to talk myself into all these teams. Take out the Pirates maybe against Aaron Nola. But you don't want to trim so many of those that you don't have your value plays, that you don't have your low ownership plays available. So make sure that, like I was talking about at the end of the show yesterday with the pitching pool, make sure that you're leaving yourself angles. It's important to do that because you don't want to trim it so much that you've only got the high price teams mashing together. Makes for awkward fits. That naturally will lead to a lot lower end positional plays. You end up with a lot of 7, 8, 9 hitters in those combinations rather than the premium bats. So you do still want to leave yourself a lot of outs with these value teams. Fortunately, there's a lot of value on the board for hitting today, so it's pretty easy to do. But that's kind of how I would look at it. You know, maybe you go through some of the overall game totals, good pitching matchups like a Rays Astros where it's good pitchers on both sides. Low end total for both teams, low end run total overall. Maybe that's a game I pluck out hitting wise. Leave it in pitching wise, pluck it out hitting wise. Giants Red Sox is maybe in that category. Guardians White Sox is moderately in that category. Actually, not really, not on the Guardians side. So that's how I would make those decisions anyway, Trey. Whew. All right. It is a little warm in here today. A lot of talking. I really appreciate the hang, guys. This was a lot of fun. We're coming up on 6 o'clock, so I am going to punch out, go build lineups. Everything runs slower on a large slate like we saw yesterday. Somebody go knock something down today. Go win something today. Good luck out there, gang. Hit the like button. Hang out in the Discord with me. It's always a great time. I appreciate the hell out of everybody hanging out with me. That said, good luck. I'll see you later.